When Marissa Devault got together with an old high school flame named Dale Harrell, the result appeared to be an ideal marriage.
Marissa was happier than I'd ever seen her.
But after almost 10 years and 2 children together, a tragic turn of events would leave friends wondering, was she hiding something?
911.
She told us that Dale had choked her.
Was yelling and screaming.
The attack would leave Dale fighting for his life.
The brain surgeon's woken up in the middle of the night.
But it would also leave Marissa exposed.
They met on a website for sugar daddies.
She would drive to Vegas and dance.
He met Marissa at a strip club called Knockers.
And lead to a shocking confession.
I wanted him to know what it felt like.
She just snapped.
Gilbert, Arizona, January 14, 2009. It was 2:45 on Wednesday morning in this affluent Phoenix suburb.
It's a nice area, a neighborhood that consisted of larger homes with some acreage.
A quiet, safe place. Usually.
911, where's your emergency? Hello?
The Gilbert Police Department received a 911 call. There was a female. She was frantic. She was not very understandable.
Ma'am, what's going on? Ma'am? Ma'am, what's going on?
That call was terminated by the caller.
The dispatcher wasn't sure just what was happening.
It was just a weird scenario.
But worried that the caller was in danger, the dispatcher immediately called the number back, and the distraught woman answered the phone.
Hello?
The caller was 31-year-old Marissa Devault, and she eventually managed to tell the dispatcher that her husband, 34-year-old Dale Harrell, had just attacked her. But when the dispatcher asked how Dale had tried to hurt her, Marissa broke down again.
Ma'am, can you talk? Hello?
It just was a really strange 911 call.
Not real discernible what was going on at the time.
The short calls had been enough to give the dispatcher Dale and Marissa's address, though. And units were already on their way when Marissa called again.
Yes, ma'am, the police are coming. What is going on?
Finally, Marissa gave the dispatcher more details.
Does he have any weapons? Not anymore. What did he have? Why did he have the hammer in his hand? Was he threatening you with it?
She was just sobbing. It's really eerie to hear. It's very disturbing.
It was very strange to hear.
And she was still sobbing when the police arrived on the scene moments later.
The officers and paramedics at the scene described her as hysterical.
It was easy to see why, because in the master bedroom, the police found Marissa's husband sprawled naked on the floor, his head in a pool of blood.
He had a pretty massive head wound.
But why had her husband of 10 years suddenly attacked her? And how did that leave him in a bloody heap on their bedroom floor? The answer lay buried behind the happy facade of Marissa's marriage. Born in 1977, Marissa Devault grew up in the small town of Lake Havasu, 200 miles west of Phoenix.
Marissa had a deprived life. She was born in somewhat impoverished circumstances.
Single when Marissa was born, her mother had dated a series of men and even married and divorced one.
She had a number of men coming in and out of her life.
When Marissa was 7, her mother married a second time, but the little girl's life remained chaotic.
Her relationship with her parents was tumultuous, to say the least.
And by the time she was a teenager, it had only gotten worse. According to one high school friend, Marissa thrived on drama.
She wanted to be the center of attention, and if you weren't paying attention to her, then she would make sure you were.
At least one person was paying attention to her, though. Her friend Mindy's twin brother, Dale. 3 years older than Marissa, Dale was a friendly and popular student at Lake Havasu High.
Everybody loved him and looked up to him, and thought he was a great guy.
Dale had a sense of humor like nobody I've ever known. He kind of was a practical joker.
But he also had a serious side.
He was very smart, and he applied himself to everything that he did.
Everything except going out with Marissa, that is. Although the two dated in high school, it wasn't serious by any means.
They had a relationship for a very short time.
After all, Dale was a senior and Marissa was only a freshman. Upon graduation, he went off to trade school and Marissa moved on in a big way. Dale may have been one of her first real boyfriends, but he was far from the last.
She became a lot more sexually promiscuous.
And when Marissa was 17, one casual hookup left her facing some serious consequences.
She got pregnant.
She's unsure, probably to this day, who the father of the child is.
Marissa had the baby girl just after graduation and just before her 18th birthday.
So she had to grow up quite early.
Life wasn't easy for the struggling single mom.
Marissa kind of would take odd jobs here and there.
It was hard for her to make ends meet.
But she always dreamed of a better life. And determined to better herself, she took classes part-time at a local community college.
She talked about wanting to be a lawyer. Marissa talked about wanting to be an accountant. High-powered careers.
Settling on one was a challenge, though.
She was always changing her major.
A major of the month wasn't the only instability in Marissa's life, either. After high school, the single mom went through a whole series of relationships, until one day in 1997, when she ran into her old boyfriend, Dale Harrell. It had been 5 years since they had dated, but Dale, out of trade school and working as an air conditioning tech, had decided to try and rekindle their romance.
Dale had called her and said, are you ready for a commitment with me now?
Marissa said yes to a date, but by the time it was over, she was seriously considering the commitment, too.
They both came back from their date seeming like they had a good time.
More dates followed, and within 6 months, when Dale's job took him to Tempe, Arizona, Marissa and her daughter made the move with him.
Marissa was happier than I'd ever seen her. She kept talking about maybe Dale was the one, maybe she could finally have a family life.
In fact, the couple was seriously considering officially becoming a family.
They were talking about getting married.
For the moment, though, Dale focused on his career, while Marissa tried to start one, working as a makeup consultant, then for the phone company, and then a series of other jobs.
She never really stuck with one job for a very long period of time.
Not that it mattered all that much. Dale was making good money. In fact, they were doing so well that they were even able to lend a hand to their friend Amy Dewey in 1998.
I was talking about moving out of my parents' house, and she suggested, why don't you come live with us? You can be the nanny.
It was only a temporary arrangement, but for the next 6 months, Amy looked after Marissa's daughter.
I enjoyed living with Marissa and Dale and supporting them in their relationship.
And their relationship was definitely growing. In September of 1999, not quite a year after Amy moved out, Marissa and Dale were married.
Dale was excited the day they got married. He wanted a family.
And by the time Marissa turned 25 in November of 2002, she and Dale had added 2 more daughters to their family.
Dale was an awesome father. He took that job, just like any other job he had, 150%.
Dale's actual job was going well, too. By By 2008, not only was Marissa able to devote herself entirely to raising the kids and taking the occasional college course, they had also moved into a new home in the upscale Phoenix suburb of Gilbert.
It's a beautiful area. They had a big piece of property.
Marissa and Dale were doing so well that they had given another friend in need a place to stay, 31-year-old Stanley Cook.
Back in 1998, Stan got into a motorcycle accident, and he had a traumatic brain injury.
Stanley Cook has a memory problem. He has a short-term memory problem.
Living on disability, Stanley was a former classmate of Marissa's. She and Dale offered him a similar arrangement to the one they had previously had with Amy Dewey.
Take care of her children and do a lot of the housework in exchange for free rent.
Marissa's daughters referred to him as Uncle Stan because he was a big part of their lives.
Stanley Cook came across as a very sweet man.
With Stan around, Marissa was even able to go back to work. In fact, it wasn't long after Stan moved in that she told Dale she found a part-time job with a man named Alan Flores.
Marissa told us that Alan Flores was in real estate and he needed a secretary.
Not that Marissa and Dale really needed the money. After more than 10 years with the company, Dale had risen far beyond a technician.
His boss was going to make him partner.
A beautiful new home, a big promotion for him, and a new job for her. 2009 was shaping up to be a banner year for Marissa and Dale. But then, just 2 weeks into the new year, a brutal attack and a frantic 911 call would leave the couple's happy, successful image smashed to pieces. Coming up, Marissa blames Dale's injuries on the couple's roommate. But will the police believe her?
Right now, the facts aren't adding up.
Just before 3 in the morning on January 14th, 2009, Gilbert, Arizona police arrived at the suburban home of Marissa Devault and her husband, Dale Harrell. The 31-year-old mother of 3 had dialed 911 moments earlier, reporting that her husband of 9 years had just attacked her. Despite what sounded like a vicious attack, Marissa was alive and well, although spattered with blood, when the police arrived on the scene.
Miss Devault came out of the house and was frantic. One of the officers described her as throwing the telephone onto the driveway.
She wasn't alone, though. Soon after Marissa stepped outside, a man followed her. But it wasn't her husband. It was the couple's roommate, 31-year-old Stanley Cook.
Stanley Cook came out of the house, was contacted by officers, and was searched. They found a small pistol in his pocket.
While one officer detained Stanley in the yard, others entered the house. They found Dale sprawled naked in the master bedroom, surrounded by a rapidly spreading pool of blood.
They found Dale on the floor with kind of a fist-sized hole in his head.
And it didn't appear to be the work of a small pistol.
I would have assumed that there had been some type of shotgun blast or something. It was a very violent, bloody crime scene.
While EMTs rushed Dale to the hospital, the police at the scene placed Marissa and Stanley in separate patrol cars and took their statements. According to Marissa, the fight had begun when she told Dale she wanted to leave him.
We were fighting over me asking for a divorce.
And that had sent Dale into a rage, Marissa claimed.
He was yelling at me and then everything.
He didn't hit her with it, though. Instead, she said that her husband had set the hammer down and then proceeded to choke her.
He was yelling and screaming.
According to Marissa, Dale had thrown her down on the bed and was on top of her, choking her when Stanley apparently heard the commotion.
Stan came in and picked up the hammer and hit him.
She told us of being attacked by Dale and Stanley Cook coming to save her with a hammer.
Where did he hit him?
On the head.
On the head? Okay.
He kept hitting Dale, but Dale would not let go of me.
In his interview, Stanley appeared to confirm Marissa's account.
He had stated that he did hit Dale with a hammer.
But when the police asked for details, they ran into a problem. Stan's old motorcycle accident.
He suffered a brain injury and had problems remembering.
Stan's memory is very tenuous.
He has very little memory of what actually happened.
At least that's what Stanley said. But the investigators suspected he might be using the old motorcycle accident as an excuse, that he might be deliberately hiding something.
He didn't talk much after that. He invoked his rights.
For the time being, the police took Stanley downtown so they could take his blood-spattered clothing and the gun he'd been carrying into evidence.
Stanley Cook had been transported to the Gilbert Police Department and was being held there.
Marissa, meanwhile, was taken to a nearby hospital.
She had told us that she had been choked, so she needed to be checked out medically.
The ER doctors couldn't find any serious injuries, but they did give Marissa something to calm her down, which showed when the investigators sat down with her at the hospital for a second interview.
She seemed very personable, very easy to talk to. Yeah.
However, when she did, several things she said didn't quite match what she'd already told the police at the crime scene. Unlike her original story that she and Dale had been arguing, this time, Marissa said she had been sound asleep when Dale climbed on top of her, naked, angry, and demanding sex.
I wake up saying, "You bitch." That was all that came out of his mouth.
Then he put his hands around her neck, according to Marissa.
I had hair pushing in, and I remember fighting at him when I could. I remember scratching him with my nails.
But she claimed that his grip grew tighter and tighter until she blacked out.
The last thing I remember seeing was Dale on top of me.
And the next thing she knew, Stanley Cook was standing over Dale with a hammer in his hand.
Where did the hammer come from?
I had it in the room earlier, actually, because the PT right by the door sold it.
Marissa said that Stanley had shouted at Dale, telling him to stop.
He told him, "Let go," and I didn't do shit. So, get it.
She had described Dale being over top of her when Stanley Cook was hitting him with the hammer.
According to Marissa, she'd watched in horror while Stanley bludgeoned her husband multiple times.
I was freaked out.
And she said Stanley didn't stop hitting Dale until he had collapsed on top of her.
I screamed really bad, and I pushed Dale off of me.
Marissa said that's when she had grabbed the phone and dialed 911 the first time.
What did Stan say?
I don't know.
But one thing was certain, according to Marissa.
He saved your life.
Marissa said it was self-defense and Stan was helping her defend herself from Dale.
In fact, Marissa claimed that night was far from the first time Dale had been abusive.
It's been like that for a long time.
When you say a long time, months, years from the beginning, what
It's actually still what happened down there.
was that reported to police, or
It was reported to the doctor.
was there a police report?
However, according to Marissa, there was divorce paperwork. Expanding on what she had previously stated at the crime scene, she told the investigator that she hadn't just been contemplating divorce. She had started the process of filing for it.
You have talked to a lawyer. When was that?
And the pending divorce wasn't all Marissa offered to vouch for her claims of an abusive marriage. During the interview, she said that the man she worked for, Alan Flores, would back her up too. In fact, she told the police that Flores had been so worried for her safety that he'd given her a gun, the gun they'd found on Stanley.
The gun was registered to this name, and he will know all about Dale and all of Dale's.
And Dale, what would he say about the attack? By the time Marissa spoke to the police at the hospital, he was already in surgery.
He's got one of the best brain surgeons in the valley that's working on him.
Although even if he lived, would the nature of the attack and the extent of his injuries leave him able to remember what happened that night at all?
The size of the hole in Dale Harrell's head from this hammer attack was actually the size of a softball.
Coming up, Marissa's claims come unraveled.
Blood evidence tells quite a different story.
And so does she.
I'm so tired of watching it.
By the morning of January 14th, 2009, Marissa Devault's husband, Dale Harrell, was out of emergency surgery at a Scottsdale, Arizona hospital.
The brain surgeon is woken up in the middle of the night and told that he's got a severe case, and the surgery is performed. Dale is stabilized.
Dale had been seriously injured just hours earlier after allegedly launching a vicious attack on Marissa.
She told us that Dale had choked her unconscious, and that when she came to, Stanley Cook was in the room and was hitting Dale in the head with a hammer.
The couple's roommate, Stanley, had confessed to beating Dale with the hammer and was being held in custody. But considering that a brain injury resulting from an old motorcycle accident had left his memory impaired, the investigators weren't quite sure just what to make of his confession.
Police are looking at Stan, but they're still trying to figure out exactly what really went on.
According to Marissa, that night was hardly the first time Dale had attacked her.
She says she was a battered woman and a victim of abuse.
She also said that a man named Alan Flores would back up those claims.
She described him as her boss.
However, before they even talked to Flores, the investigators had their doubts about Marissa's abuse story.
Marissa described Dale being on top of her as he was hit with the hammer.
But the blood-soaked pillow on the couple's bed suggested something else entirely.
He was attacked while he was sleeping in the bed.
She wasn't, in fact, being attacked.
So within 24 hours of the beating that put Dale Harrell in the ICU, the police had let Stan go, convinced that his confession had been a lie.
The blood evidence tells quite a different story.
But would Marissa change her story when confronted with the evidence? At 3 o'clock that afternoon, the investigators asked her down to the police station for another videotaped statement.
I know you got a long day, it's been a long night.
Marissa appeared more than willing to talk.
She was calm. Her demeanor was cooperative with the police.
And unaware her claim that Dale had attacked her had been exposed as a lie by the blood evidence, she stuck to her earlier story about being trapped in an abusive marriage.
He slapped me and he scratched my eye. He popped my shoulder out of joint.
Although according to Marissa, after years of suffering in silence, a week earlier she had finally worked up the nerve to tell Dale that she wanted out.
I told him I was unhappy and I wanted to consider a separation and divorce.
Marissa said that Dale had taken the news surprisingly well, and that the next week had passed in a sort of mutual standoff.
We didn't talk, we just coexisted.
Actually, they did a little more than that, according to Marissa.
We had sex, and I mean, there was nothing great or grand. I am married to the man, and I know part of marriage is that he gets to get laid.
Although on January 14th, Marissa said she hadn't agreed to give him what he wanted.
I wake up to Dale is between my legs, my pants are on my feet.
She said that he sexually assaulted her.
Marissa said she had resisted, and Dale had turned violent.
She maintained her story that she was choked, that Dale was on top of her, and that Stanley had come in and hit Dale with a hammer.
Did he say why he did it? He said he thought Dale was going to kill me.
That's what Marissa said, but the investigators no longer believed her story. And as the interrogation progressed, they put her on notice.
Right now, the facts aren't adding up.
Sergeant Ray came in the room and basically laid out the fact that your story does not match the evidence.
Not even close.
Marissa's response was exactly what the investigators had been waiting for.
Confronted with the fact that we didn't believe what she was saying, her story changed.
Marissa's new story started out the same way as her last one, with the alleged sexual assault.
He was choking me.
But this time, Marissa said she didn't fight back, that she'd waited for Dale to finish and then gone to the bathroom.
And I was crying. And standing here. And Dale would clean up.
And when she came out of the bathroom, Marissa said she saw her husband sprawled on the bed, already dozing off. And then she saw the hammer.
She just snapped.
Sobbing wildly, Marissa's confession poured out.
I said, you don't own me, and I hit with both hands, and I just kept hitting him.
She hit him as many times as he had hurt her.
I just wanted him to feel every time he's ever touched me. I wanted him to know what it felt like.
And she said she was still hitting her husband when Stanley heard the commotion, came into the room, and took the hammer from her hands.
And I didn't mean to hurt him like that.
Her confession over, the investigators placed Marissa under arrest for attempted murder.
The story she was telling matched the evidence perfectly.
But the fact that it was believable didn't make the news of her arrest any less of a shock for friends and family.
I was stunned. I never would have imagined Marissa would go this far.
How is this for real?
It was a question that investigators would soon be asking, too. After Marissa's arrest, they kept digging, checking up on the parts of her story the forensic evidence couldn't confirm.
Things that she had said, injuries that she had claimed to have at Dale's hand.
And that's when Marissa's story started to unravel yet again.
I was unable to find any medical records that documented an injury related to domestic violence. I was coming up with dead ends.
There's been no indication since the time that they've been married that he's ever been brutally violent or violent at all towards her.
Marissa had been brutally violent towards Dale, though. While the investigators checked into her claims of abuse, the beating he'd suffered at his wife's hands left him in the ICU, alive, but not much more.
And did a CT scan and an MRI on him, and he was a vegetable.
Confronted with the sad truth, Dale's family made a tough decision.
They decided to take him off life support.
We knew that was not a way that he would want to live.
And on February 9th, 3.5 weeks after Marissa had smashed his skull with a hammer, Dale Harold was dead.
We let him slip away.
The decision to take Dale off life support had serious repercussions for Marissa, too. Days after his death, the Maricopa County DA's office upped the charges against her from attempted murder to first-degree murder. And that wasn't all they did.
The prosecutors make a decision to file a death penalty allegation.
Coming up, the prosecution uncovers the truth about the man Marissa called her boss.
They met on a website for sugar daddies.
And he's not the only lover they put on the stand.
He met Marissa at a strip club called Knockers.
On February 6, 2014, Marissa Devault finally stood trial at the Maricopa County Courthouse in Phoenix, Arizona.
It took us 5.5 years to get to trial. We were at times looking to settle the case outside of a trial, but unfortunately, in many cases, you can't do that.
She was charged with the brutal 2009 murder of her husband, Dale Harrell.
You had a woman who caved her husband's head in with a hammer.
And if convicted, the 36-year-old mother of 3 faced a possible death sentence.
Marissa just didn't seem to fit a defendant that you think would be on trial for first-degree murder in a death penalty case.
At the time of her arrest, Marissa had confessed to bludgeoning Dale, but Marissa also claimed that she had suffered for years in an abusive marriage.
The defense said Marissa Devault was a battered woman.
And according to Marissa, on the night of his death, Dale had finally pushed her past the breaking point.
It was our contention that she was raped on that night, that she blew up, she just snapped.
But when the prosecutor delivered her opening statement in court that morning, she argued that Dale's death was anything but a spur-of-the-moment act.
The night she killed Dale Harrell was planned.
In fact, the prosecution revealed that nothing about the middle-class wife and mother was what it appeared to be. For starters, when Marissa reconnected with Dale after high school, the 20-year-old had been working as a stripper.
She would go to bachelor parties. She would drive to Vegas and dance at one of the strip clubs in Vegas.
We were blown away with all the things that came out. Her stripping blew me away. I honestly cannot imagine her doing that.
Once Marissa started seeing Dale, he convinced her to stop stripping. Eventually,
he would never say, "No, I don't want you doing this," or "No, you can't do this." He would tell her, "You don't have to. I make enough money."
But according to the prosecutors, stripping wasn't the only one of Marissa's secrets that the investigation uncovered. As it turned out, Alan Flores, the man who'd supposedly given Marissa the gun, the man she said would back up her claims about Dale's abuse, and the man she called her boss, was actually her lover.
He explained to us that they had met on a website designed for people to meet and hook up.
He didn't just explain it to the cops either. The prosecutors also put Flores on the stand to explain it to the jury.
It's a matchmaking website primarily designed for people who want a relationship that doesn't have a lot of strings attached.
When Alan Flores came to court to testify against Marissa, I was floored. I couldn't imagine what Marissa saw in Alan Flores.
He did have one thing going for him, though.
He had a lot of money.
And while Marissa called him her boss, that wasn't exactly her arrangement.
They met on a website for sugar daddies.
Typically, the women who go on it say that they're needing financial assistance of some sort.
Marissa wanted money out of Alan Flores. Alan Flores wanted sex out of Marissa. It was as simple as that.
And according to Flores, Marissa got plenty of money out of him.
Alan Flores was basically Marissa Devault's ATM.
The individual amounts were small, a few $100s here and 1,000 or so there, but it eventually added up.
They have a relationship that's 2 years long. During that time, he gives her $362,000.
However, However, Marissa's sugar daddy wasn't that sweet. Instead of a gift, he considered the money a loan.
Alan Flores did talk about wanting to get paid back.
According to Flores, Marissa hadn't had a problem with that. He testified that Marissa had told him she was in the process of inheriting an $8 million trust fund from her stepfather's estate.
The trust fund was supposedly held up in probate.
There were a couple of problems with Marissa's claim, however.
There is no trust fund.
Her stepfather was alive and well.
Alan told the jury that he had eventually figured out that Marissa had been lying to him.
You consider yourself having been suckered by the defendant?
Yes.
You were suckered out of your money?
Yes.
However, while Marissa didn't have a trust fund, she did have one way to get her hands on a huge chunk of cash: life insurance on Dale.
One of the insurance policies had been in place for a while. The second insurance policy, for approximately $750,000, became effective January of 2009. Dale's murder occurred January 14th of 2009.
Although according to Flores, bashing her husband's head in with a hammer had apparently been Plan B.
Alan Flores told us that Marissa had related to him that she had tried to hire a hitman.
It's just things I couldn't wrap my mind around. It was crazy.
Of course, Flores hadn't tried to warn Dale and hadn't come forward with the information about Marissa allegedly trying to hire a hitman until after the murder. And when it was their turn to cross-examine Flores, the defense pounced on that in an attempt to discredit his testimony.
The prosecutor decided to grant him immunity for his testimony, which means that they wouldn't prosecute him for anything that he said at the trial.
Unfortunately for the defense, the jury didn't have to take Flores's word that Marissa had tried to hire a hitman to kill Dale. The prosecutors also put the would-be hitman on the witness stand. The man Marissa tried to hire was a former Phoenix strip club bouncer she'd met back in the year 2000.
He had met Marissa at a strip club called Knockers.
And just like Flores, he had been Marissa's lover.
They developed a relationship and dated on and off for a couple of years.
This is while Marissa was married.
The bouncer testified that he and Marissa drifted apart once she gave up stripping. But he also claimed that she had gotten back in touch with him at the beginning of 2009.
She approached him to take care of Dale.
The bouncer said he was taken aback, and not just because she wanted her husband killed.
She's like, what husband? Because she had already told him that her husband had died of stomach cancer or something like that years earlier.
According to the bouncer, he'd refused to take Marissa up on her offer, but his testimony was key to the prosecution's push for a first-degree murder conviction.
He really set the stage for Marissa Devault premeditating killing Dale.
The attempt to find a hitman, the sugar daddy, the life insurance. By the time the prosecution rested, it all added up to one thing.
It's a tough case for the defense. That's the bottom line.
And despite the multiple bombshells the prosecution had just dropped, the defense stuck to the story Marissa had told in her tearful confession to the police.
This case was not an act of premeditated murder, that it was a case more of a rage killing.
But would the jurors agree? When the verdict was read on April 8th, they found Marissa guilty of first-degree murder.
I never believed the defense's claim that Marissa was a battered woman.
Given all the evidence against her, the verdict wasn't a surprise. But the jury wasn't done yet. The guilty verdict left one more decision to make.
Would she get the death penalty or would she get life in prison?
Coming up, Marissa begs for her life.
Our children will have to carry this for the rest of their lives.
But would it be enough to save her from execution?
Marissa was shocked when she heard.
April 17, 2014, Marissa Devault was back in a Maricopa County, Arizona courtroom. 9 days earlier, the jury had found the 36-year-old mother of 3 guilty of first-degree murder.
I was relieved. I was afraid that this jury was thinking and believing these stories that my brother was abusive.
But now the jury had an even tougher decision to make.
Deciding between life or death as punishment.
However, before they made their decision, Marissa addressed the court for the first time, offering a tearful apology.
I'm really sorry. Not only for my actions, but for everyone I hurt.
Most of all, the children she had robbed of their father.
Our children will have to carry this for the rest of their lives.
And then she wrapped up her statement by begging the jury to spare her life.
I don't know if I can be useful to anybody in this world, or in any way to life in this world, but I would like the opportunity to try.
Just as emotional, Marissa's 3 daughters, aged 18 to 11, also read letters asking the jury for mercy.
It was all we could do as a jury not to show we were affected emotionally by this.
But it did show in the end. The jury sentenced Marissa to life in prison.
I believe that there is no question that the daughters of Marissa Devault saved her life.
However, there was still the possibility of parole, and this time it wasn't up to the jury.
It was the judge's call to decide if it would be life with a chance of release after 25 years.
And when the judge delivered his decision, it was immediately obvious that he hadn't been swayed by Marissa's statement.
The judge said, "I do not believe you have remorse. I believe you are still manipulating the children."
And because of that, and because I want to protect your children, you are going to get life without the possibility of parole.
Marissa was shocked when she heard the final decision.
But if Marissa was shocked, Dale's friends and family were relieved.
Justice was served that day. She lied and manipulated the situation and made it to where there are women out there who are abused, who won't come forward because they're going to think that they're not going to be heard.
I love this.
After her second divorce, Anna Trujillo drifted into her 40s, enjoying the single life.
House to house, apartment to apartment, man to man.
But that all changed when she met a Swedish-born scientist named Stefan Andersson.
He was very cosmopolitan.
He was brilliant, highly educated.
And quite the gentleman.
He puts women on a pedestal.
An 18th-story pedestal, to be exact.
A beautiful condominium overlooking Herman Park.
They had doormen, they had valet parking.
But they wouldn't have much time. Just months after they moved in together, Stefan would be dead.
Like a scene from an horror movie.
Was it self-defense?
I couldn't breathe and I was suffocating.
Or did Anna have anger issues?
That is what makes her so dangerous.
Either way, one thing about the killing was guaranteed to grab headlines. Her choice of weapon.
This crazed woman stabbed someone with her stiletto heel.
Texas, June 9, 2013. At 3:41 that Sunday morning, Harris County dispatchers received a frantic phone call from one of the city's most exclusive addresses, a high-rise condo building in the upscale museum district.
This is a very dramatic 911 call. She is crying, she is sobbing at certain points, and she can almost be described as hysterical.
Ma'am, calm down.
The caller was 44-year-old Anna Trujillo. She told the dispatcher that her boyfriend, Stefan Anderson, had just attacked her. Despite that, Anna said she wasn't the one who needed help. It was Stefan.
He's bleeding me from the tonight. He's beating me up and myself.
But now, her priority appeared to be saving Stefan's life.
Anna pleads for someone to send an ambulance and says that they need to get there quickly, that he's dying.
I need you here right now.
Police and paramedics rushed to the scene, and when Anna met the first officer at the door of Stefan's condo, he quickly realized that she hadn't been exaggerating.
He sees Andrea soaked in blood.
And that was nothing compared to the scene inside the condo.
The carpet was soaked and saturated. There was blood spatter all over the walls.
There was so much blood that it looked like a scene from a horror movie.
And Stefan was the most horrifying of all. The 59-year-old pharmaceutical researcher lay sprawled on the floor, his face a bloody ruin.
Stefan Anderson was not even recognizable. He did not look like a person.
In fact, Stefan's injuries were so severe that the officer at the scene made an automatic assumption about what caused them.
They thought it was a gunshot.
The first responding officer immediately asks her, "Where is the weapon?"
And that's when things took a surprising turn, because the weapon Anna pointed to on the bloody floor wasn't a gun. It was a shoe.
There was a 5.5-inch blue suede stiletto heel within inches of Stefan Anderson's head.
But did the apparently improvised weapon support Anna's story about a frantic life or death struggle? Or, in a fit of anger, had she simply lashed out with the first thing that came to hand? Born in 1969, Anna Trujillo grew up in Waco, Texas, part of a family of strict Jehovah's Witnesses.
She seemed to have a very supportive family.
They weren't well off, though, and Anna never went to college. Instead, she got married straight out of high school.
She was around 19 years old at the time, and her husband worked off and on, but Anna was the main support of the house.
Outgoing and attractive, she made good money as a sales rep for the local Coca-Cola bottler.
She did very well at it, and she was with Coca-Cola around 10 or 12 years.
Anna and her husband had 2 daughters together, but split in 2000.
Anna Trujillo eventually was divorced.
She spent the next year as a single mom.
Anna had custody of her 2 daughters.
And then in 2001, Anna met and married a new man, and the family moved to suburban Houston.
They wanted to be closer to her new husband's son.
Life in Houston was an eye-opening experience for a woman who grew up poor in Waco.
This was the first time that Anna had lived in a big city, and she fell in love with Houston.
But after 7 years of marriage, she fell out of love with her second husband.
That marriage subsequently ended in divorce.
And with her daughters all but grown, Anna embarked on a new life.
Her 2 daughters were living with him out in the suburbs, and Anna moved down into the city.
In the city, the 39-year-old found a new career.
She did work as a licensed massage therapist.
She was quite outgoing, very animated, kind of a go-getter. She knew what she wanted to do, and she was out doing it.
And mostly what the newly single Anna wanted to do was enjoy life.
She just changed drastically.
in ways that were a complete 180 from her background and upbringing.
Her family was religious.
Anna never drank very much. She was starting to drink more. She got really involved in the nightlife.
She frequented bars and restaurants. She liked lots of attention, and she liked to go out and party.
And when Anna partied, she partied hard.
She liked tequila shots.
She was just a loose cannon. You didn't know what you were going to expect from Manager Hio.
She got plenty of attention, too.
People were always attracted to her.
Especially men.
Anna Trujillo traded on her sexuality.
For drinks, meals, and places to stay.
She didn't have her own apartment, her own place.
She was somewhat of a drifter. She went from house to house, apartment to apartment, man to man.
Which was basically how Anna first met Stefan Anderson.
Anna was staying with a man who was living on one of the upper floors in the same condominium building.
So they met each other in the hall.
And they hadn't been talking long before Anna discovered that the debonair older man with the accent was single. Born in 1954, Stefan was a respected pharmaceutical researcher.
He was brilliant, highly educated.
Originally from Sweden, he had been in the States since the 1980s.
I really liked America because people are really friendly and open here.
He was very cosmopolitan.
When he met Anna, the well-traveled scientist had recently given up a pharmaceutical research job in Dallas to become a professor at the University of Houston.
He taught biochemistry.
Although both positions paid well.
Stefan Anderson lived in a rather affluent high-rise.
The building did have a concierge at the front. They had doormen. They had valet parking.
And when Stefan bumped into Anna in the lobby of his building in August of 2012, he was more than happy to strike up a conversation with the attractive woman.
She was really outgoing, really funny. She was really entertaining.
Anna appeared equally enamored with the 58-year-old scientist, because when Stefan asked if she would like to get a drink later, she immediately said yes, despite the fact that she was staying with a different man in the building.
That relationship was ending.
They'd end up going out that evening together.
And within days, she was spending her nights with Stefan, too.
It didn't take long before they moved in together.
Not that they spent too many evenings in Stefan's condo.
They would go to various restaurants and bars there in the museum district.
This is one of the best areas in Houston.
Lots of fine museums, fine restaurants, lots of interesting nightlife.
And Stefan always picked up the check.
He puts women on a pedestal.
Even if their relationship raised a few eyebrows among Stefan's elite social circle.
Their relationship, to a lot of people, was bizarre.
You have a woman, she doesn't have an education to speak of. You have a world-renowned scientist. People are wondering, what are those two doing together?
Some people, perhaps, but for others, it was obvious.
She was 44, he was 59.
He was very happy and proud to show her off.
He told a friend that he'd met a hot Latino woman and that he was really enjoying it.
And in some ways, Anna may have been good for him, too.
He was a shy man.
He was not assertive in any way.
At least, that's what everyone thought. But less than a year after they first met, a late-night 911 call would leave the police wondering, was Stefan really that mild-mannered? Or did the research scientist's suave exterior mask a brutal secret?
Okay, meow, meow, meow. Hello?
Coming up, Anna exposes Stefan's inner demons.
He could not stop drinking.
And she details the desperate struggle that led to his death.
It had all the makings of a self-defense case.
On June 9th, 2013, Houston police responded to an urgent 911 call from the Park Lane, one of the most exclusive addresses in town.
Oh, beautiful condominium overlooking Herman Park.
Minutes earlier, 44-year-old Anna Trujillo had called 911 to report that her boyfriend, Stefan Anderson, had just assaulted her.
Anna is hysterical. She's crying. She's sobbing. It's actually hard to even understand her.
And when the first officer on the scene reached the condo, it was clear that Anna had reason to be distraught.
When he gets there, Anna Trujillo opens the door, covered in blood.
But that was nothing compared to Stefan's condition.
At the end of the hallway, he can see Stefan Anderson laying there in a pool of blood.
The 59-year-old university professor wasn't moving, his head a bloody mess. And when the officer checked Stefan's vital signs,
he finds that Dr. Anderson has no pulse.
EMTs arrived on the scene moments later and confirmed that Stefan was dead. There was another surprise coming, though, because when the officer at the scene asked Anna where the weapon was,
he originally thought Dr. Anderson had actually been shot in the head.
Anna pointed to the high-heeled shoe on the floor next to Stefan's head.
Who knew you could use that as a murder weapon?
Stefan had been killed with a 5.5-inch stiletto.
You could see that it was bloody. You could see that there was hair wrapped around it.
While crime scene investigators began processing the condo, the police transported Anna downtown to take her statement, even as news crews began flocking to the scene.
Cameras are already starting to come to the Park Lane.
We all just heard this apparent crazed woman stab someone with her stiletto heel.
Escorted out of the Park Lane before the news crews could set up, the police brought Anna downtown for a formal statement. And once inside the interrogation room, Anna explained that her relationship with Stefan had started out well.
We went out. It was positive, it was very good. He really liked me.
He actually texted me that he was crazy and in love.
And according to Anna, he meant it.
He asked me to move in and he asked me to marry him.
Anna said that her first inclination was to say yes.
I like intelligence, he's respectable, and he treated me very good.
But she also said that she hesitated. According to Anna, Stefan's devotion had a dark side.
She said there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than what people saw.
For one thing, Anna said that Stefan was a lonely, lonely man.
Most of his family still lived in Sweden. His close friends really were still in Dallas.
And once they started dating, Anna said that Stefan's affection for her had become obsessive.
That was just everything.
And Anna said that Stefan refused to let anything or anyone infringe on their relationship.
She claimed that he was very jealous.
Everywhere, he was just 24/7 on me.
But according to Anna, Stefan's drinking was the worst part.
He could not stop drinking.
He'd start drinking from about 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night.
And when he was drunk, Anna said that the mild-mannered professor became a very different man.
He started becoming abusive.
Like physically abusive, mentally abusive?
Mentally abusive. Ugly, yeah, to me.
Just about words and
how he
treated you.
And then the words he used, yes.
Although words had been enough, according to Anna. She told the investigators that at the beginning of 2013, she packed her bags to leave.
I said, you know what, I can't live like this.
Anna said she had left, heading down to Mexico for an extended vacation. But she also claimed that Stefan had contacted her regularly the entire time she was gone, begging her to come back.
I told him that I love him. He's drinking too much, that he needed, to stop.
According to Anna, that's exactly what Stefan did. She said that by early in the summer of 2013, Stefan had sought treatment and kicked his drinking habit entirely.
He was looking good with a tan.
Anna told the investigators that Stefan had been doing so well that when he once again asked her to marry him at the beginning of June, she had said yes.
This is what I wanted this whole time, you know? So we're happy and everything.
But that happiness wouldn't last. According to Anna, she and Stefan had gone out on the town the night before, partly to celebrate their pending engagement.
They went to 5015, which is an upscale bar here in Houston.
And despite his recent return to sobriety, Anna said that she noticed that Stefan was drinking. Not that she'd apparently thought much of it at the time.
We're having a nice time, you know, and it was good.
But Anna said by the time they got home, Stefan wasn't just drunk. She said he'd become angry, too.
And they'd both been drinking, and, it's a volatile situation.
According to Anna, Stefan had accused her of flirting with other men at the bar.
I get jealous when he's talking to those guys.
Anna said that when Stefan started getting belligerent, she had decided to leave. But according to Anna, when she turned for the door, Stefan had flown into a rage.
He just came in towards me. He goes, God, I'm going anywhere. You're not going to leave me. I can't ever.
Anna said that Stefan had gotten between her and the door.
He wouldn't let her leave?
I'm like, please, please let me leave.
But according to Anna, the more she pleaded, the angrier Stefan had become.
He starts to get out of control, and he's yelling and he's put into a frenzy.
And when Anna bolted for the door,
he grabbed me, and he wouldn't let me go, and he started wrestling with me.
He got her into a very painful wrestling hold.
They said they fell over a couch, rolled off of the couch, struggled, went down the hall, struggled more.
He slammed her up against the wall.
Anna said she had fallen to the floor soon after, with Stefan on top of her.
I couldn't breathe, and I was suffocating, and I was like...
Dr. Anderson was hurting her tremendously, putting her in a lot of pain.
I was losing consciousness.
On the verge of blacking out, Anna said she had reached for the first thing she could find, her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She grabbed the shoe. That was the only thing that she could use as a weapon.
I was just hitting him with the shoe. Please stop.
But she said that Stefan hadn't released her until it was too late.
And then that's when I saw the blood.
And it was only then, once he'd rolled off of her, that she'd realized just what she had done.
I felt sick and like I saw him.
If what Anna said was true, Stefan's death was quite possibly justified.
This is domestic violence. It was a sudden passion case. She did what she had to do.
It had all the makings of a self-defense case.
But only if she was telling the truth. And with what promised to be a high-profile homicide on their hands, the Houston police decided to take Anna into custody until they could check out her story. Coming up, Stefan's friends confirm at least some of Anna's claims.
He did turn to drinking.
But will the physical evidence suggest Stefan turned to violence, too?
Anna Trujillo has not a mark on her. Not a bruise, not a scratch.
By mid-morning on June 9th, 2013, Anna Trujillo sat in a holding cell at the Houston Police Department. The 44-year-old massage therapist had been taken into custody a few hours earlier after killing her boyfriend, Stefan Anderson.
Whenever a woman kills a man, the first question is, what did he do? There is this perception out there that because women generally are not as violent as men, that clearly he must have deserved it.
And that appeared to be true in Anna's case. Questions questioned by the police, she said that Stefan, a 59-year-old research scientist and college professor, had attacked her in a drunken rage.
He started beating me and I was telling him to please stop.
Anna said that she had fought back with the first weapon that came to hand, her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She started striking him with the shoe. It was the only thing available at the time.
She just did what she could to save herself.
And police were inclined to believe her.
Her story on the surface seemed very plausible.
The police did take her into custody while they verified her story, though. And the first step was having her strip off her bloody clothes so the police could document her injuries.
I photographed her from top to bottom, side to side, back.
But even before the photos were shot, Anna's story started to go awry.
Anna Trujillo suffered no injuries.
Anna Trujillo has not a mark on her. Not a bruise, not a scratch, nothing.
It was a marked and extremely suspicious contrast to Stefan's injuries, which were massive.
Stefan Anderson was struck at least 25 times.
You could see definitive shapes of that heel mark right there on the head.
However, those weren't the only wounds the autopsy found, though.
He also had puncture wounds to the back and front of his forearms, and especially to the palms of his hands.
In other words, textbook defensive wounds.
We believe he put up his hands and arms to defend or protect his face.
Meanwhile, the crime scene investigators back at Stefan's condo had made some curious discoveries of their own concerning the blood spatter where Stefan had died.
The vast majority of the stains are all about 2 feet from the floor, very low to the ground.
Which suggested the exact opposite of Anna's story, that Stefan had been on top of her.
These blows were inflicted as Stefan Anderson was on his back.
And when the investigators examined the bloody clothes Anna had been wearing, they noticed something else.
Anna Trujillo had blood soaked in her crotch and in her thighs.
The defensive wounds, the blood spatter, and the bloodstains on her clothing all led the investigators to the same conclusion.
Every strike to Stefan Anderson was while he was laying down, and she was on top of him.
She was straddling him.
And if that was true, that meant Anna's entire account of Stefan's death was a lie.
Anna Trujillo did not act in self-defense.
However, when the investigators questioned the couple's friends, they confirmed at least part of Anna's story. Stefan had struggled with alcoholism, especially since moving to Houston a few years earlier.
He really didn't have a social network in place, and he did turn to drinking.
And Anna's claims that he was an angry, abusive drunk. Would his friends confirm that, too?
Anyone that knows him are 100% sure that there was no abuse from his side against her or towards her.
There was no information that said that Dr. Anderson had ever been violent with anybody, ever.
Stefan is this incredibly gentle man. Just incredibly gentle.
He would never even say bad words to anyone.
And while Stefan's friends admitted that he was an alcoholic, they said that compared to the Chardonnay-sipping Stefan, Anna was far worse.
Miss Trujillo had been arrested twice for driving while intoxicated.
And considering the circumstances surrounding one of those arrests, it was amazing she hadn't killed someone then.
She had been driving the wrong way down one of the major freeways.
Some people in life don't really handle alcohol well, and she was one of those people.
The result was a downward spiral.
Every time I would see her, it seemed like she was more disheveled, more intoxicated.
She was kicked out of bars for being publicly intoxicated.
And according to her friends, Anna wasn't just a drunk. She was a mean drunk.
If something set her off, there was no telling what she would do.
She just blurts nasty things out. She just suddenly attacks them.
And when it came to men, friends claimed that Anna's attacks would often turn physical.
We found several men that actually had instances of her biting or striking them in the face.
She hit a man over the head with a candlestick.
Needless to say, once Anna had hooked up with the shy, quiet Stefan, friends had figured it was a disaster waiting to happen.
The two of them together was a bad combination.
They kind of spiraled out of control when the two of them were together.
I think in some ways it sounded like a perfect storm.
Not only was Anna loud and domineering,
she was the one that was aggressive.
Stefan's mild manner did little to keep her worst tendencies in check.
He would never stand up for himself. He doesn't want anyone to be angry or upset.
He would rather not hurt somebody's feelings and suffer himself, rather than make someone feel uncomfortable.
And according to his friends, Stefan had suffered.
I heard from friends of his that he had come with black eyes.
In fact, friends said that Anna had only been living with him for a few weeks before Stefan realized he had to end things with her.
But she was a handful. She was too much.
Although even then, friends said that the mild-mannered scientist had, of course, hesitated.
He didn't really have it in him to throw someone out.
But at the beginning of 2013, his neighbors at the Park Lane had forced the issue.
The management at the Park Lane spoke to him about her and her presence in the apartment.
Other residents had actually complained about Anna Trujillo's behavior.
It was the last straw, friends said. Stefan had finally had enough.
By January or February of 2013, he wanted her out of his life.
And contrary to Anna's claims of an engagement, his friends said that 6 months into their relationship, he had kicked her out.
Changed his locks in his apartment,
had her guest privileges revoked.
Although even then, Stefan hadn't made a clean break with Anna. Instead, he'd paid her way to Mexico.
He sent her to Mexico just to get her out of his hair.
With Anna gone, Stefan had started to move on.
He was happy again. There was no mentioning of ever getting back with her.
But was Anna as willing to walk away from Stefan? Friends said that once she returned from Mexico, Anna had a disturbing habit of turning up in the same upscale bars and restaurants Stefan frequented.
Stefan always had the same routine during the day, and she knew that routine.
He was easy to stalk.
And despite their recent breakup, friends said that Stefan went out of his way to be cordial to Anna.
Stefan was a really caring person.
He really wanted to help her.
In fact, Stefan even went so far as continuing to pay Anna's bar tab.
She basically lived off him even though she didn't live with him.
At least, not always. But according to friends, Stefan would still allow Anna to crash at his condo from time to time, whenever one of her other friends kicked her out.
Dr. Anderson seemed very torn. Anna Trujillo really had nowhere else to go.
I don't know that he's ever cut out any person out of his life.
But had Stefan's kindness and his unwillingness to assert himself ended up costing him his life? By the end of that Sunday, the authorities were convinced. Less than 24 hours after Stefan's death, they booked Anna Trujillo on murder charges. Coming up, will a new witness tip the scales for the prosecution?
It was like 8 minutes of hell.
Or will an overlooked detail in the autopsy results support Anna's story?
It was above the legal limit.
On March 31st, 2014, Anna Trujillo walked into a packed courtroom at Houston's Harris County Courthouse.
There were cameras and definitely lots of media attention in the courtroom.
The 45-year-old massage therapist was charged with the sensational murder of her ex-boyfriend, a 59-year-old scientist and university professor named Stefan Anderson.
The community interest was huge. Everyone was fascinated by this.
And given the weapon she had admitted using to kill Stefan, it was easy to see why.
The news that a woman had pummeled a man to death with her stiletto heel just took off like wildfire.
She was dubbed as the stiletto murderer.
Released on a $100,000 bond, Anna had spent the months before the trial telling anyone who would listen that she wasn't a murderer at all.
She had done several pre-trial interviews trying to get her side or her story out there.
He attacked me and I defended myself.
Anna Trujillo's story was always self-defense.
The pain was so excruciating and I was in fear and all I had was my shoes.
But the prosecution wasn't buying it.
The physical evidence just didn't match what she was trying to say.
And in opening statements, the prosecutor said that contrary to her claims that Stefan was an abusive alcoholic, Anna was the real violent drunk in the relationship.
Her drinking usually ended in her becoming physically violent.
According to the state, June 9th, 2013 had been no exception. The prosecution argued that when Stefan and Anna had returned to his condo after a night out drinking, something had set off Anna's notorious temper.
They came back, things got heated, and she just became out of control.
And at some point during her outburst, the prosecution believed that Anna had shoved her ex-boyfriend to the floor.
We know that Dr. Anderson had fallen down on his back. He's face up.
That's when, according to the prosecution, Anna had grabbed the murder weapon. Her 5-inch stiletto heel.
She climbed on top of his chest and then repeatedly struck him.
It was basically like taking an ice pick to someone's face.
And the prosecutors claimed that even as she beat him to death, there was no evidence that the kind, gentle Stefan had tried to retaliate.
Even at the moment that Stefan Anderson is being beat to death, he refuses to hit a woman.
There was no reason for her to kill Stefan Anderson. This was not self-defense, this was murder.
And the prosecution felt they had the witnesses to prove it, too, including one who could attest to Anna's behavior on the night of Stefan's murder. On March 31st, 2014, prosecutors called a Houston cab driver named Rosemary Gomez to the stand. She testified that Stefan had called for a cab at about 1:30 a.m. on June 9th from the Museum District Bar where he'd had dinner and drinks with Anna. But when Rosemary met Stefan outside the bar, Anna hadn't wanted to leave.
He asked me if I could wait a minute because he had to go get his lady friend.
Security footage from inside the bar appeared to back up Rosemary's story, too.
You see Anna Trujillo flirt with other men at the bar. You see her to continue to drink alcohol.
And it was only after several minutes with the meter running that Stefan finally managed to pry Anna away from her tequila.
You could tell she had way too much to drink.
Anna Trujillo was very aggressive, very angry, and belligerent.
And according to Rosemary, the cab ride that followed had seemed like an eternity.
Anna Trujillo cussed her out on the way home and got very, very angry and verbally abusive with her.
F this, F that, bitch this, bitch that. It was like 8 minutes of hell.
Stefan had tried to make the best of the situation.
He was very calm the whole time, very together, you know. He never cursed, he never said anything bad.
He was apologizing for her to the cab driver.
He was more embarrassed than anything else.
And when the taxi had finally arrived at Stefan's building, Rosemary said that Anna had refused to wait while he paid the fare.
She started telling me, let me out this cab.
She was jerking on the door and stuff, trying to open it up, you know, and kicking at the back seat.
Despite her haste, Rosemary testified that once out of the cab, Anna had stood on the sidewalk and continued to scream at Stefan.
She's very derogatory in the way that she speaks to Dr. Anderson.
Just went on, you know, like a drunk person, how they carry on.
In fact, Rosemary said she had been so disturbed by Anna's behavior that she had offered to drive Stefan somewhere, anywhere, to give Anna time to cool down.
I was concerned for his safety, and I let him know it. I said, Mr. Anderson, I really got a bad feeling that something's gonna happen.
But according to Rosemary, Stefan had refused the offer.
He said, you're a very kind lady. He said, but thank you. He said, I'll be fine.
And then, according to Rosemary, she had watched helplessly as Stefan turned around and followed Anna into the building.
The last image of Stefan Anderson alive is actually pretty heartbreaking. You can see him walking into the lobby of the Park Lane, and he just looks defeated.
And in a little more than an hour, he would be dead. But while the prosecution accused Anna of killing Stefan in a drunken rage, when it was the defense's turn, they reminded the court that she wasn't the only one that had been drinking that evening.
Dr. Anderson was an alcoholic.
And that was despite his recent stint in rehab.
He was in relapse. That he was probably worse than when he first quit drinking.
And the defense had the evidence to prove it, too. Stefan's blood alcohol level.
It was above the legal limit.
The defense said that the results overwhelmingly supported Anna's self-defense story.
An alcoholic can just go off the deep end in a split second.
You can't trust that he's in his right state of mind.
The defense claimed that in the summer of 2013, Stefan wasn't just in relapse, he was in a downward spiral.
Witnesses said he drank every day, that he would be intoxicated before noon.
He didn't do anything but drink.
According to the defense, Stefan had managed to hide his addiction from friends, family, and even co-workers, but not Anna. They claimed that she had suffered the full wrath of Stefan's drunken temper.
They tried to portray Stefan Anderson as an alcoholic who was aggressive and mean when he was intoxicated.
They tried to paint her as the poor woman who was stuck in this horrible relationship.
And the defense claimed that once alone in Stefan's condo that night, he had turned on her, furious at how she had embarrassed him on the ride home.
Anderson was the one fighting her, the one beating her up.
And the defense said that Anna had done the only thing she could have done, fight back.
I felt it was a very strong self-defense case.
In fact, the defense was so sure of their case that they wrapped it up without putting Anna on the stand.
She hit him 25 times because she did what she had to do. She did what any reasonable person would do.
Naturally, the prosecution strongly disagreed.
Anna Trujillo violently beat her intimate partner to death for no reason. That is what makes her so dangerous. There is nothing to stop her from doing it again.
Nothing but sending her to prison, that is.
Anything less than a life verdict is unacceptable.
Coming up, a confident Anna awaits the jury's decision.
She expected to get off very easy.
But will her expectation be justified?
As little as 5 years in prison?
On April 8, 2014, the jury in Houston, Texas announced it had reached a verdict in the trial of Anna Trujillo. The 45-year-old was charged with murdering her ex-boyfriend, Stefan Anderson, with a stiletto-heeled shoe.
From the get-go, this case garnered national attention because of the murder weapon.
Anna didn't deny killing Stefan.
She claimed that it was self-defense.
But when the verdict was read, the jury found her guilty of murder. Anna took the news surprisingly well.
She was very calm. She was very collected.
But she wasn't resigned to her fate. At her sentencing on April 10, 2014, she finally took the stand to make a statement. And she wasn't apologetic either.
She wasn't like scared or worried or nervous.
Instead, she all but demanded that the jury give her the minimum sentence.
As little as 5 years in prison?
And despite the fact that the jury had rejected her self-defense claim, she stuck to it.
She talked about some of the violence that she'd suffered
She described how horrific the fight was, that she was just trying to use self-defense to keep herself alive.
In fact, she didn't just describe it. She went on and on about it for over 7 hours.
She was telling her whole life story.
She just kept on talking and talking and talking.
Anna and her attorney even went so far as to act out key moments of the alleged struggle in front of the jury.
It was Anna Trujillo's show.
But would her last-minute plea, all 420 minutes of it, make any impression on the jury?
The jury sentenced her to life in prison.
She was so shocked.
She began sobbing.
I think she expected to get off there easy.
For Stefan's friends and family, some of whom had traveled all the way from Sweden for the trial, the sentence brought some sense of closure.
Even if nothing can get him back again, we're happy that justice is served.
But it couldn't make up for the tragic death of a kind and gentle man.
He did not deserve what happened to him at all, in any way. He was a really good person, the best person ever. And she is either a really crazy person or a really evil person that could do something like that.
Denise and Ed Bozarth had a life most people would envy.
Living on a boat, hanging out, wearing flip-flops.
They really didn't work.
And they didn't have to.
He used to walk around with like a Ziploc baggie full of nothing but hundreds.
But then a mysterious death.
It was obvious that the body had been there for some time.
Would leave the authorities wondering.
His past might have come back to haunt him.
There were a lot of rumors that he flew drugs back and forth from South America.
That he was an informant for the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Or was it possible Denise had some secrets of her own?
Ed did ask me if Denise was cheating on him.
He was always cheaper than divorce.
Key Largo, Florida, July 1st, 2007. It was a lazy Sunday evening on the largest of the Florida Keys.
Key Largo is great snorkeling, great fishing, blue water. It's paradise. It's absolutely beautiful.
And the lifestyle is relaxed and very laid back.
It's a very small town, really kind of sleepy place.
And few places in Key Largo were sleepier than Gilbert's Marina.
Gilbert's is a quintessential Keys kind of a place. It's a marina. There's a bar there. There's a kind of a rundown hotel there.
The people Gilbert's drew were a mix of tourists, weekenders, and what the locals call liveaboards.
There are a significant number of individuals in the Keys that live on their boats.
A group of people that congregate mostly around the tiki bars.
There's a heavy drinking culture in Key Largo.
Although on that particular Sunday night, at least one resident of Gilbert's was hard at work instead.
A volunteer firefighter with the Key Largo Fire Department owned a vessel that was dry docked at the marina he was working on and fixing up.
But while he worked, he couldn't help notice the smell coming from the 36-foot cabin cruiser in the next berth.
Something that was very, very strong and very, very pungent.
The firefighter hailed the boat.
The boat was called the Screw You 2.
And when no one answered, the firefighter clambered aboard to investigate.
He went over to the boat, lifted the hatch.
And when he did, The sickly sweet odor was overpowering.
The Keys are very hot in the summertime. They maintain a consistent temperature around the 90s.
One whiff was all it took. The firefighter slammed the hatch shut, pulled out his cell phone, and dialed 911 to report a dead body.
As a firefighter, he knew what death smelled like.
The body was still aboard the boat, and it's obvious that the body had been there for some time.
Although before sheriff's deputies even arrived on the scene, the caller had a pretty good idea just who the dead body might be. Because the boat belonged to an eccentric liveaboard named Ed Bozarth and his wife, Denise. Born in 1973, Denise grew up in the Florida Panhandle on the opposite end of the state from the Keys.
Denise's parents lived in Defuniak Springs, Florida. It's a mostly rural area just to the west of Tallahassee.
Her father was a Florida state trooper, and he raised his daughter to be respectful, hardworking, and quiet.
She was very reserved when it came to talking about herself.
Not that there was much to tell. Denise married young, but the marriage ended in divorce, and by her mid-20s, she was living on her own in South Florida, eking out a living with a series of low-paying, part-time jobs.
She was a waitress. She was out at the shrimp docks, just doing what she could to get by.
And she wasn't afraid of hard work or manual labor.
She was a fairly stocky and strong woman.
And it was while working on the docks in the mid-90s, helping unload the day's catch, that she met Ed Bozarth. Born in 1945, Ed grew up in Miami and spent most of his adult life as a pilot, flying all over South Florida, the Caribbean, and Latin America.
My dad loved to fly. He was a spray plane pilot for a while. He flew DC-3s, which he really enjoyed.
Although when he met Denise, he'd recently given up crop dusting and flying charters to try his hand at being a shrimp boat captain.
He liked the solitude about boating. He liked the freedom to be able to go wherever you wanted to go.
And while he'd been married and divorced multiple times,
he had fathered children by, I think, 3 women?
He was most comfortable being alone.
My dad was a very complicated person. He was someone that would sit back and observe people.
However, the admitted loner was also in his mid-50s, and shrimping was hard physical labor. So after a few weeks observing the hard-working young woman hustling to unload the daily catch on the docks, he offered to hire Denise on as crew.
She would run the shrimp boat with my dad. That's pretty much where everything started. You know, she started working for him.
And it wasn't long before Ed and Denise were more than just captain and first mate, too.
They just became close.
Despite the fact that they made an unlikely-looking couple.
Ed was real thin. He's not a real big guy.
He was, pretty much bony almost. Denise was a big, hefty woman.
And there was a big difference in their ages, too.
Mr. Bozarth was 25 years older than Denise.
However, Ed quickly fell for his much younger first mate.
He loved her. That was clear to see.
Denise must have felt the same way about Ed, too. Because when he asked Denise to marry him, she said yes.
They got married June of 98.
And for all their differences, the marriage appeared to work.
Their relationship seemed absolutely, completely normal. I mean, Ed was a little bit possessive. She would get upset with him sometimes about certain things, but they seemed to get along fine.
In fact, they soon started a family.
He had 2 children with Denise.
Ed was pushing 60, though, and by 2001, he and Denise had sold the shrimp boat and bought a cabin cruiser.
It's a 36-foot Trojan, went inboard. It was fairly tight quarters. It was laid out fairly nicely.
It had sleeping in the bottom level, 2 rooms. One was the kids and one was Ed and Denise's room. And then, of course, you had the living room, which had the kitchen and, a little common area.
Denise and Ed sailed the cabin cruiser to Key Largo, leased a berth at Gilbert's, and settled in to semi-retirement.
He did some various jobs around the marina and assisted people with various work projects or mechanical issues.
And while Ed tinkered, Denise focused on raising the couple's 2 toddlers.
They really didn't work.
They didn't really need to either. Shrimping, or something, had apparently been very good to Ed Bozarth.
He used to walk around with like a Ziploc baggie full of nothing but hundreds.
And he'd unzip that bag whenever Denise needed something.
Ed gave her everything that she ever wanted. He would do anything for this woman.
Not that she ever wanted much. Living on a boat with 2 small children may have been a little crowded, but it did allow Ed and Denise to enjoy the sort of laid-back Florida Keys lifestyle other people could only experience on vacation.
They had access to the bar and the restaurant and could go out in the ocean with the boat.
They were living the dream life of the Keys, living on a boat, hanging out, wearing flip-flops.
Denise also spent a fair amount of her evenings hanging around Gilbert's Tiki Bar.
She was kind of a barfly.
They had bands on the weekends, which were actually lovely to go sit and listen to. It was just a really beautiful place to go hang out. Very friendly.
Ed, on the other hand, kept mostly to himself.
We would say we're going to the tiki bar. Ed would hand her money so she could go out and have a great time with just be careful. That's all he ever said to her. He'd kiss her and say, just be careful.
And then he'd go back to tinkering around the couple's cabin cruiser.
People barely ever saw Ed off the boat.
He didn't have very many friends.
And the few he had often had a hard time getting in touch with him.
He didn't have email. He didn't have a cell phone.
While the outgoing Denise drank at the bar, Ed had increasingly become a hermit, one whose philosophy was best summed up by what he'd christened their cabin cruiser, the Screw You Too.
It's just his attitude, his approach toward, people.
He liked his privacy. He didn't want people to know his business.
Or was there more to it than that? Thanks to that bag of cash he always carried around, the gossip at Gilbert's Tiki Bar was that in addition to being eccentric, the former pilot was also in hiding.
There were a lot of rumors that he flew drugs back and forth from South America.
Not only would that explain all the cash, Ed dropped a fair number of hints himself, spinning all sorts of wild tales on those rare nights he did turn up in the Tiki Bar.
He always talked about missions that he was on, the airplanes that he was in, jumping out of an airplane, just all sorts of craziness.
Although the way Ed told it, he wasn't a drug smuggler. In his version of the story, Ed was always working for the good guys.
The legend of Ed Bozarth was that he was some sort of informant or an agent for either the DEA or the CIA.
Whether Denise's husband had really been a drug dealer or a DEA informant, it was tough to know for sure.
Who knows in the Keys? I mean, a lot of people have stories.
It just seemed too fascinating to be true.
And as it turned out, Ed Bozarth had one more good story in him, even if he wouldn't live to tell it. Coming up, would Ed's tall tales turn out to be true?
It could have been someone coming from revenge.
Or did Denise have some secrets of her own?
We saw that there was motive.
At 11:30 on the night of July 1st, 2007, a volunteer firefighter who lived in a Key Largo, Florida marina noticed a suspicious odor coming from the boat in the next berth.
He described the smell as being very horrific.
It was very noticeable because the smell was prevalent throughout the parking lot.
Law enforcement was called and boarded the vessel.
And when the deputies went below decks, they found the source of the odor, a man's dead body.
He was found in the starboard engine compartment.
The body itself was wrapped inside a sail bag, the type of bag you'd store sail aboard in a sailboat.
He was very badly decomposed.
Despite that, it was obvious how the man had died.
His head had been bashed in.
It was obvious it was a homicide.
And whoever had killed him had meant to keep it a secret as long as possible.
The interior of the vessel was air conditioned. There were 2 different air conditioning units that were set to the lowest temperature on the thermostats.
It also appeared that the killer had tried to clean up the crime scene, too.
The carpet had been removed.
But when the killer pulled up the carpet, they must have realized that short of sinking the boat, there was little hope in totally destroying the evidence.
There was what appeared to be blood on the floorboards.
Had that discovery caused the killer to give up and leave the body behind? For the moment, the investigators had no idea, but they did have a clue as to who the body in the boat might be.
The registered owner was Edward Bozarth, and the information that we obtained early that morning was that he, his wife Denise, and their 2 small children lived aboard that vessel.
Everyone in the marina knew whose boat it was.
Confirming that the body was Ed's would take time, though. So while coroner's personnel removed it for the autopsy, the investigators fanned out across the marina to question Ed and Denise's neighbors. One of the first people they spoke to was a marina security guard named Campbell, who lived on a boat moored near Ed and Denise's cabin cruiser.
Docked probably about 50 feet or so behind the Bozarth vessel. And after knocking on the door a few times, he finally opened the hatch.
Like all the other liveaboards at Gilbert's Marina, the guard knew Ed and Denise, but he told the investigators he didn't know anything about what had happened. In fact, he didn't seem all that curious about it either.
He didn't question the fact that there were law enforcement vehicles and crime scene tape all over the place, which was kind of odd.
Other neighbors were far more intrigued, though, and several in the group that gathered just outside the crime scene tape told the investigators they hadn't seen Ed Bozarth around for about a week. But they also said that wasn't unusual, given the retiree's antisocial tendencies.
They wondered where he was, but they had not been terribly concerned.
Neighbors also said that Denise and the couple's 2 children had been gone even longer.
The children had gone to stay with their grandparents in North Florida 2 weeks prior to this. 1 week after that, Denise had left town to go up to her parents in North Florida as well.
And according to at least some of their neighbors, Denise hadn't planned on coming back. At least that was the gossip around Gilbert's Tiki Bar.
Most people said that Denise and Ed did not have a good marriage.
However, that wasn't the only, or even the juiciest thing that the investigators learned from Ed and Denise's neighbors.
There had been a rumor that he was an informant for the Drug Enforcement Agency back in the 80s.
And now that Ed had been murdered, his neighbors couldn't help but wonder. Maybe it was true.
There was some speculation that his past might have come back to haunt him.
Someone coming for revenge.
Was it possible that Ed's murder was drug-related? When the investigators followed up with the DEA, they hit a dead end.
They either couldn't or wouldn't provide any information.
Not even to law enforcement, local law enforcement.
With the DEA unable to either confirm or deny the rumors, the possibility of a drug hit was starting to sound a little more plausible. But when the investigators contacted Ed's older daughter, Ariana, with the news that her dad was dead, she offered up an entirely different theory, one concerning her stepmother.
The lead investigator, I told him instantly, Denise did it.
Not that Ed's daughter actually had any proof.
It was just one of those things where you have that gut instinct.
The investigators needed more than a gut instinct, though. And by that evening, they had made the long drive to North Florida to interview Denise at her parents' house in Defuniak Springs.
She was surprisingly calm and cooperative. She didn't have that concern or that shock that someone would have, even if they were in a bad relationship, that their spouse was just found murdered.
Perhaps. Although according to Denise, Bad didn't even begin to describe her relationship with Ed.
Denise said that he was physically abusive to her.
Denise said her son, not yet 10, could back her up on that, too.
One of the 2 children living with them on the boat told police that he had seen Ed give his mother a black eye.
Denise told the investigators that Ed had been beating her for years.
It was an ongoing, abusive relationship.
But according to Denise, that was the first time he had actually struck her in front of the kids. And she said that had finally spurred her to take action.
On June 16th, her parents picked up her 2 children.
And a week later, Denise had followed.
She moved out. She packed her bags and left for Defuniak Springs.
But had she done more than just leave Ed? The investigators fished for a confession.
I gave her an out. I gave her the battered wife syndrome. I said, look, if you did it, it's probably during self-defense. Just tell us exactly what happened.
But Denise didn't take the bait.
She came across as just not really knowing much.
And unlike her neighbors at the marina, she wasn't willing to speculate either.
Denise did not have anything to say as far as what might have happened.
Could Ed tell them something about his killer, though? On July 3rd, the Monroe County Medical Examiner performed an autopsy on the body tentatively identified as Ed Bozarth.
The medical examiner was able to determine that the cause of death was blunt force trauma.
The weapon would be consistent with something like a hammer.
The medical examiner positively identified the body as Ed's a few days later.
He had to be sent up for a forensic analysis by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement because his body was so badly decayed.
They were no closer to identifying his killer, however.
We were being very objective, not being just focused on one person.
Although that didn't stop them from going back to the marina and re-interviewing Denise and Ed's neighbors to try and confirm what she told them about her husband's abuse.
We saw that there was motive.
And the marina staff, Ed and Denise's fellow liveaboards, and even the regulars at Gilbert's Tiki Bar all appeared to confirm it.
The majority of the witnesses that we spoke to described Ed as being very controlling.
One woman called him creepy.
And she had a point, considering all the things friends and neighbors said that Ed did.
Not allowing Denise to go to the bathroom for more than 10 minutes. He wouldn't allow her to use her cell phone unless he was present.
Some even confirmed her son's story, more or less.
Denise had told her friends and other people at the marina that Ed had been physically abusive to her.
He was rumored to have given her a black eye shortly before Denise left town.
However, the investigators also noticed something odd about all the rumors of abuse floating around the marina.
We don't have documentation of domestic violence between them prior to this murder.
There are no eyewitnesses that ever saw any kind of physical altercation between the two of them.
And even if there had been, few people at the marina would have pegged Ed as the winner.
Describing Denise as being the controlling part of that relationship.
Denise was significantly bigger than Ed. Ed was a small man. Denise is a big woman.
But the biggest surprise came when the investigators spoke to the marina security guard for a second time.
We had a lengthy interview with him.
And this time, Campbell admitted to being less than forthcoming with the detectives the first time they spoke.
He ultimately ended up telling the police that he had lied.
For starters, Campbell told the investigators that he had a very good reason to be concerned about Ed's murder.
He had had an affair with Denise.
Coming up, the investigators learn more details about Denise's affair.
They were talking about going somewhere in the Caribbean.
But was that Denise's only motive?
Ed Bozarth recently came into $600,000.
By the 4th of July, 2007, it had been a little more than 48 hours since Denise Bozarth's husband, Ed, had been found dead on the couple's boat in a Key Largo marina.
It was decaying. That's why he was discovered, is because of the smell.
Some neighbors speculated that the 62-year-old retired pilot had been killed because of his supposed past as a DEA informer.
One of the rumors that kept coming back to us said that Ed was probably killed by somebody that he had, shared information on.
But that wasn't the only theory floating around the marina.
The other theory was that his wife killed him.
They were known to be fighting, and then he was rumored to have beaten her shortly before Ed ended up being found dead.
And one of the Bozarth's neighbors, the marina security guard whose boat was berthed in the next slip, had just admitted to having an affair with Denise.
He admitted that he had had a sexual relationship with Denise Bozarth and had for at least a month before Mr. Bozarth's death.
But was the affair the motive for murder, or merely part of the setup? Because the fact that he'd been sleeping with Denise wasn't the only bombshell Campbell dropped during his interview.
Denise had offered him $10,000 to kill her husband.
The security guard said he'd refused Denise's offer, but the investigators couldn't help but wonder, had she gone ahead without him?
We questioned, was it possible for Denise alone to not only kill Ed, but to tie him up and stuff him into a bag in the boat? And yes, she could have done that with him. He's not a real big guy.
Why Denise might want Ed murdered was fairly clear to investigators.
They were fighting. There was apparently physical abuse.
But when the investigators spoke to Ed's adult children from his previous marriages, they discovered that Denise may have had another motive: money.
Ed's family expressed concerns that Denise would inherit several $100,000 if Ed were to die.
Ed Bozarth recently came into $600,000.
And despite Ed's habit of carrying around a plastic bag full of cash, it wasn't drug money or a payoff from the DEA.
It was an insurance policy from his dead mother.
The source of Ed's cash may have been anticlimactic, but it made for a powerful motive, especially when combined with rumors of an abusive marriage.
She was involved in a very bad relationship, and there was an incentive to get out of it and to be rewarded for getting out of it.
And then there was the fact that Denise had left Key Largo at the same time her husband disappeared.
She packed up and left June 23rd, and Ed was found on July 1st.
The last time that he had been seen was the day that she left.
Motive, timing, and the fact that she tried to pay another man to do the job. For the authorities, it all added up to one thing. Denise Bozarth had murdered her husband.
There really wasn't any other individual that was realistically responsible for this crime.
But while the authorities were convinced, could they convince a jury? For starters, Denise had no record.
How can you go from not being a violent person to committing a murder in such a violent, brutal fashion as she did, bashing her husband's head in?
They couldn't use forensics to put the murder weapon, believed to be a hammer, in Denise's hand either. In fact, the investigators never found it.
We did search the water underneath the boat, and it was not found.
What forensic evidence they did have was of little use.
Her DNA would have been on the boat because she lived there, so that wouldn't tell us really anything.
And considering the source, the one piece of evidence connecting Denise to the murder, the security guards claimed that she'd offered him $10,000 to do it, was just as problematic.
He was definitely a suspicious character, particularly considering that he was close to Denise.
Not only did he admit to having an affair with Denise, he'd already lied to them once, initially claiming to know nothing about the murder. And that left the investigators uncertain whether to believe Campbell when he said he'd refused Denise's offer of $10 grand to kill Ed.
We actually have never been able to rule him out.
All in all, it added up to a very shaky case, and the prosecutors would only get one shot at a conviction.
And a homicide, you don't get a second chance. And if they're exonerated, that's it. They're done.
So for the moment, they waited.
They just did not have the evidence they needed to go arrest Denise.
And in 2010, after 3 years passed with no new evidence,
they declared the case inactive.
By 2011, the murder of Ed Bozarth was just another of the many stories told over margaritas at Gilbert's Tiki Bar.
That's a very small town, so when a homicide happens, there's a lot of talk.
Stories were about all that was left, too. After the murder, Denise had sold Ed's boat, moved back to northern Florida, and started her life over again.
She was living with a boyfriend.
But just when it appeared that Ed's murder was destined to be nothing more than another piece of local folklore, there was a new sheriff in town, literally. And after winning the election, he decided to review a few of the unsolved cases his predecessor left behind.
The Bozarth case being one of them. So he assigned a new detective to basically start the investigation over again from the beginning.
They put new eyes on it.
One of the first things the new investigator assigned to the case did was make the long drive to the Florida Panhandle to question Denise again.
he went and re-interviewed her several times.
And when he asked her when was the last time she saw Ed, Denise gave a different answer. Previously, when talking to the detectives, Denise claimed she'd last seen Ed asleep in their cabin on the boat. But this time,
she says that he had got on a bus and was going to go to Key Largo, and that's the last time she saw him.
Of course, it had been 4 years since the murder. Maybe she'd forgotten. But the investigators did talk to someone who had a much better memory of the events leading up to Ed's death. A friend of Denise and Ed's named Bonnie Cologne. Bonnie had been living in Inverness, Florida, when she met Denise and Ed in 2005.
I was working at a restaurant and they came in all the time. Ed's mom passed away and they were staying at Ed's mom's house until all the stuff was sold.
Bonnie had quickly taken a liking to the couple, especially the eccentric Ed and his wild stories.
Ed would tell me about missions he was on in South America, and he would always just have something amazing to say.
The waitress remained friends with the couple after they returned to Key Largo, too. In fact, she'd gone down to visit them several times, including one lengthy visit in June of 2007, just before Ed's murder.
She had been present on the boat for several weeks prior to Ed Bozarth's death.
My divorce was going through and they invited me to stay with them.
And when the police tracked her down and spoke with her at the end of 2011, Bonnie told the investigators that she hadn't been living with the Bozarths long before she realized their marriage was in trouble, too.
Ed did ask me if Denise was cheating on him.
And according to Bonnie, the answer wasn't just yes. She made the affair sound far more serious than the security guard had ever let on.
They were talking about taking off and going somewhere in the Caribbean.
However, Bonnie said that running off with her boyfriend wasn't all that Denise had talked about that June.
When she started talking about killing Ed.
She was frustrated with him. She wanted a way out.
At the time, Bonnie said that's all she thought Denise was doing, venting her frustration.
A lot of people say that they want to kill their boyfriends or their girlfriends. So I just always thought that she was just, messing around or just saying stuff.
Although according to Bonnie, the stuff Denise said had included possible ways of killing her husband.
She was talking about how she could just knock him over his head and throw him into the water. I always thought it was just a joke.
But the investigators weren't laughing, especially when they heard another one of the scenarios Denise had supposedly come up with.
She had told Bonnie that one of the ways that she wanted to kill her husband was to hit him in the head with a hammer while he was sleeping, cover him in plastic, and put him in an engine compartment. Turns out that just happened to be the way that my dad was actually murdered.
Joking or not, Bonnie said that Denise talked about killing Ed so often that she had eventually found somewhere else to stay.
She got tired of Denise talking about wanting to kill Ed, so she left.
That wasn't the end of Bonnie's story, though. She told the investigators that she'd gotten a cryptic call on June 23rd, 2007, a week before Ed's body had been found, warning her to stay away from their boat.
Denise called me to tell me not to go to the boat, that she was leaving Ed, and she didn't want me to get involved.
Or in hindsight, was there another reason for the warning?
She didn't want me to find Ed's body.
Coming up, more than 4 years after Ed's body was found, the authorities finally make an arrest.
We could charge Denise with murder.
But will they charge the wrong person?
His mother was always cheaper than divorce.
In March of 2012, it had been almost 5 years since a neighbor found Ed Bozarth dead on the boat he shared with his wife Denise in Key Largo, Florida.
He had smelled his decomposing body. He hadn't seen Ed for a little while, so he called the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
The authorities had long suspected that Denise had killed her husband. The question was whether or not they could prove it.
We had some circumstantial evidence, but we did not have the physical evidence that was needed.
What they did have was a statement from another of Denise's neighbors, a man who also worked as the marina's security guard, claiming that she tried to hire him to kill her husband.
She offered $10,000 to Mr. Campbell.
That's what Campbell said, but the authorities weren't sure a jury would believe him. After all, the fact that he was having an affair with Denise gave Campbell a motive to kill Ed, too.
Certainly we had suspicions about Mr. Campbell.
But then, at the end of 2011, a friend of Denise's named Bonnie Cologne had come forward with information that appeared to confirm the guard's story. According to Bonnie, Denise had spent the weeks before the murder talking openly about killing Ed.
Denise had been talking about scenarios much like what ended up happening.
Bonnie stated that Denise wanted to bash Ed in the head and just wrap him up and stuff him away somewhere.
I was like, oh my God, this woman said she was going to kill him, and she did.
So on March 14th, 2012, investigators from the Monroe County, Florida Sheriff's Department once again made the 600-mile drive to Defuniak Springs to talk to Denise. And this time, they brought an arrest warrant.
There was definitely sufficient evidence where we could charge Denise with murder.
When she was apprehended, she was taken to the sheriff's office in Escambia County near Pensacola, and she was given her Miranda warnings.
Not that Denise heeded them. More than anything, the 39-year-old appeared to be in a hurry to get the interview over with.
I asked her if it's Jamie, am I going to be here all day?
Well, no, at that point I'll just leave. I can't talk to you at that point.
But when given the opportunity to stop the interview then and there, Denise passed on it.
Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now? That is the question. Yes.
And at first, Denise claimed that she had nothing to hide. She told the investigators that she and Ed weren't getting along, so she had decided to take the kids and leave.
Did you think there were going to be any issues when you were leaving between Ed and you? It was okay with you leaving?
She really didn't say anything substantial for quite some time.
But the investigators kept pressing.
She was confronted by the police with, the inconsistencies of her story.
And that's when Denise's story changed again.
She tells the detectives very reluctantly that she was worried that her husband was going to kill her.
His motto was, oh, it's always cheaper than divorce.
The investigators immediately saw an opening.
Was he being abusive? I don't want to fill in all the blanks here, please. I'm pretty sure I understand. Can you just give me a couple of details? Was there any weapons? Okay. He had a weapon? Or not? You threatened you with?
She stated that she awoke and that her husband was standing over her and pointing a gun to her head.
He was going to kill me and they too. And the kids, they killed her too.
Denise said she'd done what anyone would have in her situation.
Was there a fight over your gun?
And when Ed kept coming toward her, Denise said she'd grabbed a hammer lying by the bed and hit her husband with it, repeatedly.
Sure, I didn't really stop moving.
She hit him so hard that it cracked his skull from one end to the other and one end to the other.
Although Denise confessed to killing Ed, she insisted that she hadn't planned to do it, and that what happened had nothing to do with her affair with the marina security guard.
Did he help you in any way? I know he wasn't there for the hammer, but did he help you clean up the incident?
And Campbell's claim that Denise had offered him money to kill Ed, or all the things she'd supposedly told Bonnie, According to Denise, they'd simply misunderstood her.
I basically told him the same thing I told Bonnie. The only way I get any relief from being able to get away is if he passed away.
That's what Denise claimed, at least. But the authorities had their doubts.
She was having an affair with Campbell, and Mr. Bozarth had just inherited approximately $650,000.
And for that reason, they had some serious doubts about Denise's self-defense claim.
We speculated that she may have hit him while he was asleep.
So once the interview was over, the investigators transported Denise back to Monroe County, where she was charged with first-degree murder.
We felt that if the case were to proceed to trial, that we would prevail.
But in December of 2013, with the trial fast approaching, something happened that would leave that confidence shattered. During a preliminary hearing on December 17th, Denise's attorney argued that her confession should be excluded from the upcoming trial.
During the interview with a Monroe County Sheriff's Office detective, she had apparently asked to speak with her lawyer.
It had happened right before she admitted to killing her husband.
Maybe she has to have some kind of a true story that you can lay out that makes sense to us. You know what I mean? For your defense attorneys, prosecutors, I think they'll be sympathetic towards what
Contrary to what he told her at the start, the investigator didn't stop the interview.
Yeah, obviously that's something that you're going to have to work out with your attorney.
And a few minutes later, as the interview continued, Denise brought up the matter of an attorney again.
Would I be able to talk to an attorney today?
You can call anybody you want.
However, the investigators still didn't stop the interview, a fact the prosecutors tried to downplay.
I thought the detectives adequately answered her question. It was more of an offhand comment like, well, do you think I'm going to need a lawyer?
But the judge disagreed. In fact, he ruled everything past the point Denise first asked for a lawyer inadmissible in court.
The confession was thrown out.
Coming up, will Denise stand trial?
It was going to be a harder case.
Or will the prosecution cut their losses?
Something is better than nothing.
On April 8, 2014, Denise Bozarth stood in a Florida courtroom. It had been almost 7 years since her husband's body had been found on their boat in Key Largo, and a little over a year since the 41-year-old had admitted to killing Ed, a confession that had been ruled inadmissible in court.
They actually had to throw out her confession because investigators did not let her speak to her lawyer.
I was upset that they ended up having to toss the confession.
And what was especially upsetting was that without Denise's confession, a conviction might be tough to come by.
It was going to be a harder case because it was all circumstantial now.
So rather than take their chances at trial, the prosecutors had offered Denise the opportunity to plead guilty to a lesser charge.
After discussing the case at length, it was decided that the case would plead out to a second-degree murder and a 14-year prison sentence.
I would have wished for her to be in there longer, but something is better than nothing.
Denise took the deal.
There was enough evidence to where her lawyers realized she had to make some kind of plea deal.
And she stood before the judge that morning and pleaded guilty to Ed's murder.
I almost think that maybe it's her way of coming to peace with the whole situation.
After 7 long years, the search for Ed Bozarth's killer was finally over. Although the outcome wasn't exactly satisfying.
What's 14 years? For killing a man, I think she should have been in jail for a lot longer.
And while the second-degree plea deal was due to necessity, most remained convinced that Ed's murder was premeditated.
I don't think it was a crime of passion. I think that it was cold and calculated and thoroughly thought out. She deserves to serve all 14 years. She deserves to stay there as long as possible.
That was amazing.
I love this.
Angelina Rodriguez had never been one to settle down.
She didn't seem to stay with men for very long. Her love life was like a revolving door.
But then she met Frank.
He was head over heels.
And within months, they were married.
They fell in love so deeply.
But then, just 5 months after the wedding, Frank came down with a sudden illness. And 56 hours later, he was dead.
How did my brother die? The medical examiners were stumped.
Was it payback for an old grudge?
She's telling me someone's poisoned your brother.
Or was Angelina looking for a payday?
$250,000.
The search for the truth would be a crazy ride full of double crosses.
Angelina doesn't know that the joke's on her.
Secret tapes.
Something's happened to your friend.
Everybody in jail is looking for a deal.
And a final reveal that would rip the mask off a monster.
Cold-hearted killer. The term truly applies.
Montebello, California, September 9th, 2000. It was the middle of the night in this quiet community of 60,000 in Southern California, San Gabriel Valley.
It's east of Los Angeles. It's very suburban, middle class.
But then, at a little after 3 o'clock that morning, Los Angeles County 911 received an urgent call from 32-year-old Angelina Rodriguez.
Angelina said that she found her husband face down on the floor, and he wasn't breathing.
Paramedics and officers from the Montebello Police Department rushed to the scene. And when they arrived, they found 41-year-old Frank Rodriguez collapsed on the floor beside the couple's bed.
When first responders got there, they found Frank in a terrible condition. There was blood coming out of his nose.
And when the paramedics checked his pulse, they discovered that Frank Rodriguez was dead. But what had killed him? According to Angelina, Frank had been ill recently.
She explained to them that for the past few days, Frank was having severe stomach issues.
So severe, in fact, that she said Frank had been briefly hospitalized less than 48 hours earlier.
Angelina herself had actually taken Frank to the hospital.
According to Angelina, the doctors had suspected her husband was suffering from a stomach bug, or perhaps a bad case of food poisoning.
They told Angelina, take him home and give him as many fluids as possible, and just hope that it passes.
But instead, it was her husband who had passed, and the investigators' search for answers in his mysterious death would raise a surprising number of questions about his wife, Angelina. Born in 1968, Angelina grew up in the blue-collar community of Rockaway Beach, New York, though her childhood had been anything but pleasant.
There was not a lot of affection and bonding, attachment, regard for the members of the family.
They had a father who was truly an absent father.
When Angelina was a toddler, her father left the family altogether, so her mother had to work long hours at 2 jobs to support Angelina and her sister.
Angelina's mother was constantly gone. Her mother was always working.
And since daycare wasn't really an option for the struggling single mom, she often left Angelina and her sister in the care of their grandfather, who practically raised the 2 girls.
She was really looking for attention, and she found that in her grandfather.
As she grew up, Angelina kept on looking for attention.
She was a social butterfly.
It just went from one boy to the next, and then eventually from one man to the next.
Right after high school, Angelina married a man who was a neighbor, but like all her other relationships, it didn't last long.
Her love life was like a revolving door, and I think it was just her way of getting attention and getting love.
She was capable of having relationships, romantic relationships, but they were only on a superficial level.
It was the same pattern, repeated over and over.
All of Angelina's relationships, they started quickly and they ended quickly.
In May of 1990, at the age of 21, she married for a second time. And this time the relationship looked like it might last. First, Angelina and her husband settled in the Central California town of Paso Robles.
Paso Robles is in the central coast of California. It's known for its vineyards. It's just gorgeous. It's picturesque.
Angelina and her new husband also had 2 little girls, one in 1990 and the other 2 years later.
She was described by everybody as being a devoted parent who enjoyed being with her children and laughing and playing with them.
But then, in 1993, her youngest daughter died.
Her daughter choked on a pacifier.
These pacifiers have been recalled because of either deterioration or failure.
The tragic loss took a frightful toll on Angelina and her marriage.
Angelina was quite devastated. She became quite depressed.
And by 1994, Angelina had both divorced for a second time and fallen back into her old familiar pattern of short, failed relationships.
Those relationships did not work out for one reason or another.
By the year 2000, she had even married and divorced a third time.
She didn't seem to stay with men for very long.
However, not long after her third divorce, while working at a National Guard facility, the 31-year-old met someone who finally offered the stability that her life had been missing. Frank Rodriguez. 9 years older than Angelina, Frank had grown up in Connecticut, part of a tight-knit family.
I just loved him to pieces. He was just so cute. He was kind of my protector at school when he had a couple friends that liked me but wouldn't let me date them. We were really close.
After high school, Frank married his hometown sweetheart and joined the Navy.
He loved the Navy. He saw Japan, he saw Alaska. He enjoyed what he was doing, serving the country.
But his long absences at sea also took a toll on Frank's marriage.
His first wife was not happy that he was continually leaving for 6-month stints.
In 1995, after 14 years of marriage, Frank divorced. Ironically, by then, Frank had left the Navy to pursue a teaching degree.
He started going to college, in fact, went into the National Guard while he was working on his degree.
And his Guard service, combined with his passion for teaching, led to a job at a National Guard facility called Angel Gate Academy.
Angel Gate was like a camp for at-risk youth.
He felt he could make a difference in troubled kids' lives.
And in February of 2000, Frank noticed someone new in the office, Angelina.
She was an attention grabber, and she was a looker.
Frank soon asked her out, and before long, they were dating.
They had gone on their first date around Valentine's Day, and he was head over heels in love with her.
In Angelina, Frank saw something he had always wanted, a family.
She already had a daughter. She was already a mother. For Frank, this was like hitting the lottery.
Angelina, never one to move slowly in a relationship, fell just as quickly for Frank.
They fell in love so deeply that they married within 3 months. They met in February and were married by April.
And within days of the wedding on April 8th, the couple left Angelina's longtime home of Paso Robles behind and moved 200 miles to the south to the town of Montebello, California.
He was starting the job with the school district.
The move was tough on Angelina.
She doesn't know anybody. She doesn't have a job. Her friends are miles and miles away.
Frank, on the other hand, appeared happy to be making a fresh start.
He just seemed to be so excited to be able to be there.
He had the beautiful wife. He had the instant family. He couldn't have asked for more.
But how long would he enjoy it? On Wednesday, September 6, 2000, 5 months after the wedding, Frank began feeling sick at work.
Frank had come home from work, complaining of stomach pain.
It was very unusual for Frank.
He didn't have any health concerns that I was aware of. He was a very healthy guy.
But by the next morning, the pain had gotten so bad that he agreed to let Angelina drive him to the hospital.
Frank came into the hospital complaining of severe stomach pain.
The ER doctors weren't all that concerned, though.
He had been told by the doctor that he just had flu.
That, or a simple case of food poisoning. Either way, the hospital sent him home after a brief examination.
The medical advice was for him to drink a lot of fluids and to rest in bed.
Angelina could not have been a better nurse. She cared for him nonstop. She was at his bedside 24 hours.
Right up to the moment less than 48 hours later, when Frank fell out of his bed and died. Coming up, the authorities try and unravel a mystery.
How did my brother die?
And Angelina provides a clue.
Is somebody in the office?
In the early morning hours of Saturday, September 9th, 2000, police and paramedics rushed to the Montebello, California home of Angelina and Frank Rodriguez.
Angelina herself called 911 and told police that her husband was found face down on the floor and he wasn't breathing.
And by the time the paramedics arrived, the 41-year-old Navy veteran was dead.
My mom called me. I was at work and she was hysterical. And she said that Frank was dead.
It was shocking. It's like surreal.
It was also quite a mystery.
How did my brother die as a healthy young man?
According to what Angelina told the first responders, Frank had been ill for the past few days.
Frank had actually been in the hospital just 48 hours before, having severe stomach pain.
Although despite the severe pain, the doctors had dismissed Frank's illness as a simple stomach bug, or possibly food poisoning.
They sent him home and told him to consume as many fluids as possible.
Had his doctors missed something? The autopsy provided no answers.
The medical examiner was really stumped at Frank's death.
It's not very clear how he died. There are no wounds.
And the toxicology tests all came back negative.
The coroner had run all the standard tests on Frank's body. There were no standard drugs or any types of things like that.
They really did not have that cause of death.
Angelina had a few ideas, though. Once the autopsy was complete, she contacted the authorities, concerned about the results.
She wanted to make sure that she was doing everything possible to push this along, to get the answers that everyone was looking for.
And according to Angelina, she had reason to be concerned. On September 14th, 3 days after the autopsy, the 32-year-old sat down with investigators from the LA County Sheriff's Department and told them she believed that Frank had been murdered.
You have some information or believe there's a possibility that your husband was poisoned.
Angelina told the investigators that she suspected one of Frank's former co-workers at Angel Gate Academy, the boot camp for at-risk youth.
Angelina told investigators that this former co-worker had abused kids while working at the academy.
Not only had he allegedly been abusing the kids, Angelina said that she and Frank had reported it.
Once received the reports that were filed, they were initiated by Frank and myself. That's how all of this started.
However, Angelina said that their superiors at Angel Gate had dismissed those reports.
And I was just appalled. I was just like, how can you just let him walk around here?
According to Angelina, she and Frank had been so disgusted by the situation that he'd started looking for a new job. But even after he got the job in Montebello, and they had moved more than 200 miles to the south, Angelina said they hadn't put the trouble at Angel Gate entirely behind them. Frank still occasionally went to Angel Gate, and in fact was there just days before he died.
Frank had gone up there the week before to have a meeting.
Angelina said that Frank had thought nothing of it at the time.
I get back, I said, so how is everybody there? They were great. They walked up to me, they hugged me, they said they missed me. It felt like I was at home. There was no animosity.
Or was there? According to Angelina, the next day Frank had come home from work feeling ill.
But I was so flushed, and I thought, well, okay, maybe he's tired.
That night, Frank became violently ill, unable to keep anything down.
About 7:30, he started crying. That's what did it.
Angelina said she had urged Frank to go to the emergency room.
He goes, no, I probably just got back.
But by the next morning, Angelina said that Frank's condition had become so bad that she had insisted they go to the hospital.
Obviously, Angelina's alarmed.
So I take him in and I said, I don't know what it is. He can't stand, he can't talk. I said, he's throwing up.
The doctors checked him out, but weren't quite sure what had made Frank sick.
The diagnosis was something akin to gastroenteritis. Food poisoning was also discussed.
Angelina said that the doctors had sent Frank home with a prescription for anti-nausea medicine and instructions for Angelina to push fluids, which she did.
I had him jug of water. I'm thinking the worst is over.
But it wasn't.
She couldn't seem to help him get better.
By Saturday, less than 3 days after his symptoms began, Frank was dead. The sudden mystery illness left Angelina convinced that Frank had been poisoned.
I don't know what else it could be. I mean, for him being as healthy as he was, and for it to come from this strong man to, it just seems over what, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
And the fact that it had come so soon after his visit to Angel Gate couldn't be a coincidence in Angelina's mind.
There's somebody in the office that am I hungry and thirsty and Gatorade and cookies.
Angelina said she didn't know exactly who had given Frank the food.
Somebody in the phone who offered him the Gatorade. Somebody in the office. Somebody in the office. Okay.
But she claimed to have a good idea. The man they'd reported for having inappropriate relations with a student.
He's the one that threatened Frank. It was just too hard for me to fathom anything else.
The investigators told Angelina they would look into it. And then, before wrapping up the interview, Angelina asked if the investigators could speed things up as far as settling the cause of death.
I mean, is there any way that you can push him?
Angelina was getting a little impatient. She asked what the holdup was with Frank's body.
After all, she had a funeral to plan.
It's going to be a full military burial at the Riverside National Cemetery.
Not that Angelina necessarily acted like someone planning her husband's funeral, a mere 5 months after their marriage.
She did not seem at all upset. She didn't come across as the typical grieving widow that someone, just devastated because they've just lost their spouse. She didn't come across that way at all. She was very cool, very calm, had, explanations for how everything happened and what she was going to do.
Why wasn't Angelina more upset over Frank's death? When the investigators spoke with his sisters, they suggested that it was because the couple's 5-month marriage hadn't been a happy one.
It seemed like it was starting to turn sour pretty quickly.
The trouble had started soon after the couple moved to Montebello.
She feels isolated from the life that she knew and loved.
Although according to Frank's family, she wasn't that isolated.
She had maintained her old apartment.
In fact, even after the move to Montebello, Angelina had spent most of her weekends in Paso Robles without Frank.
She and her daughter would leave and leave Frank at home. So I think it was deteriorating pretty quickly.
Angelina was absent so much that Frank had quickly started worrying.
He confided in his mother. He had major concerns.
He was very close to his pastor at his church. He'd go there and speak with him a lot about how to improve his marriage.
And if a troubled marriage wasn't enough to make investigators look twice at Frank's mysterious death, they soon uncovered evidence she'd taken an insurance policy out on Frank in July of 2000, barely 2 months before he'd fallen ill.
The life insurance policy taken out on Frank was $250,000.
And the investigators couldn't help but wonder, was that the real reason why Angelina wanted them to push things along?
In order for them to pay Angelina, they would need to know the cause of Frank's death.
Coming up, is Angelina dropping hints?
She, as we're driving along the highway, pointed out the oleander flowers.
Or is Frank's real killer after her?
Angelina calls police and says, "Oh my gosh, now he's threatening me."
By the end of September 2000, it had been 3 weeks since 32-year-old Angelina Rodriguez's husband, Frank, had died mysteriously in the couple's Montebello, California home. The death had come barely 5 months after their wedding, and less than 48 hours after a sudden illness had sent the 41-year-old to the emergency room.
It was just more than a stomach flu. It was gastric pains, and I can't even imagine.
And even after his death, the exact nature of Frank's illness remained a mystery.
Nobody knew how he died, just that he was dead.
Angelina had her suspicions, though.
She believed he was poisoned, and she had a big, long story about who she thought had done it, someone that he had worked with.
She was apparently so certain that the former co-worker was behind Frank's death that she wanted to know why the investigators weren't pursuing it harder.
She calls police almost on a daily basis. She wants to know what the latest is, if there's been any updates.
And the investigators weren't the only ones Angelina had been harassing in the days following Frank's death.
She was bothering the heck out of the coroner's office,
wondering why we didn't have a death certificate.
Why was Angelina so anxious about Frank's death certificate? The investigators suspected it might have something to do with the $250,000 she was due to collect from Frank's life insurance.
She's impatient and she wants to get the benefits.
In fact, she had all but said as much in her interview with the investigators.
They probably won't pay because it's so new until the coroner says what the cause death is.
But if the insurance money provided a motive for murder, there was still the matter of how.
She was claiming that one of his coworkers had put poison into his Gatorade.
Was it possible the autopsy had missed the poison? Frank's sister Shirley was convinced based on something Angelina had said. According to Shirley, it had first come up in a phone call while they were discussing plans for Frank's funeral.
She's telling me this, someone's poisoned your brother's story, and I said to her, Angelina, I just don't understand this. How does someone poison a person?
And instead of saying, I don't know, Angelina says, oh, you can do it a number of ways.
Although according to Frank's sister, Angelina had mentioned one poison in particular.
Her answer to me was, oh, it's pretty easy. Like out here we have oleander.
Oleander is a flower that's very prominent all over California, and it has properties that can be poisonous to humans.
Frank's sister said that Angelina had mentioned oleander again during the limo ride to Frank's funeral.
As we're driving along the highway, pointed out the oleander flower. He says, here, Shirley, when we talked about oleander, those are the plants that grow all over California. It's very easy. Anyone could get these.
At the beginning of October, the LA County Medical Examiner's Office sent tissue samples from Frank's autopsy off to a private lab to test for oleander. And while they waited for the results, the investigators did a little snooping of their own. And on October 9th, they made an interesting discovery in Angelina's backyard.
Angelina had an oleander plant growing over the fence.
However, just as the investigators were beginning to suspect Frank had been poisoned with oleander, Angelina called them up on October 19th and sent the investigation spinning in an entirely new direction.
Angelina told investigators she had just received an anonymous call.
And according to Angelina, the anonymous caller had offered her a tip.
This anonymous caller told her to tell them to look for antifreeze.
Was it possible the investigators were looking for the wrong poison? After all, ethylene glycol, the primary ingredient in antifreeze, is an even more deadly poison than oleander.
It tastes sweet and it's undetectable when you drink it in other drinks.
Or was it possible that Angelina was trying to throw the investigators off track?
This is the first time that antifreeze has been mentioned to police, and it comes directly from Angelina.
While not entirely sure what to make of Angelina's tip, the investigators did pass it along to the lab that was already testing for oleander. And on November 28th, the results came back.
And guess what? Both came back positive.
According to the tests, Frank had been poisoned with both oleander and antifreeze, although it appeared that what finally killed him was a massive dose of antifreeze.
Frank's body actually had 6 times the necessary amount to kill him.
The testing also revealed that he'd been given the fatal dose not long before his death. In other words, while he was at home under Angelina's care.
She was having him drink Gatorade, and she put the antifreeze in the Gatorade.
Investigators were convinced that Angelina had killed her husband, but they didn't arrest her just yet.
What they decide to do is get in touch with the coworker that Angelina had initially pinpointed as a suspect. They get this coworker to call Angelina,
and the investigators were listening in when he placed a call to Angelina on December 13th and asked why she was telling the police he had poisoned Frank.
He said, why are you saying these things about me? Please stop. You know I had nothing to do with it.
The investigators hoped that Angelina might be so caught by surprise that she'd say something incriminating, but she refused to take the bait.
She didn't have a dialogue with him. She just told him that he needs to call the investigators.
It was a disappointing turn of events for the investigators. Or at least, it would have been if Angelina hadn't called them moments later.
She called up and gave a different rendition of what the conversation was.
Angelina calls police and says, oh my gosh, Frank's old coworker just called me and now he's threatening me. Angelina doesn't know is that the joke's on her. Of course, the police knew that the coworker had called her.
And since they had both calls on tape, by the time Angelina hung up the phone, she had inadvertently allowed the investigators to catch her in a lie.
Angelina was really her own worst enemy.
At the end of January 2001, the investigators told Angelina that the medical examiner was finally going to issue a death certificate.
Angelina Angelina is just elated with these developments.
And then they told her that they were preparing an arrest warrant in the case.
She goes as far as asking police if she can be present when they arrest the coworker because she wants to see the look on his face.
And Angelina would be present for the arrest. On February 7th, 2001, almost 5 months after Frank's death, the LA County authorities knocked on Angelina's door with a warrant for her arrest.
Maybe we were finally going to get some justice from this. Maybe we're finally going to have some answers as to why this happened.
Going through Angelina's purse after taking her into custody, the investigators stumbled across one last piece of evidence that was almost too incredible to be believed. A carefully written out list of numbers.
It contained all the amounts of insurance money she stood to gain.
Not only that, it explains exactly what she's going to spend the money on.
She even calculated the interest she would earn from the insurance payout.
Coming up, Angelina makes another incriminating call.
She's practically waving a flag at everybody saying, "It's me, it's me."
And new evidence leaves the authorities wondering, was money her only motive?
She had the boyfriend who lived up there.
On October 15th, 2003, 35-year-old Angelina Rodriguez went on trial in Los Angeles, California. She was accused of murdering her husband of 5 months, 41-year-old Frank Rodriguez. And if convicted, Angelina's life was on the line.
Angelina was charged with capital murder, and the death penalty was on the table.
And when the prosecutors opened their case against Angelina, they appeared determined to get it.
The prosecution in this case portrayed the defendant as calculating, manipulative, premeditated, committing an unspeakable act for greed.
And according to the prosecutors, it had been exceptionally cruel. First, she'd tried to kill him with oleander, and when that didn't work and the doctor sent Frank home, she'd finished him off with antifreeze under the guise of nursing him back to health.
She gave him tea, drinks, soups, and we don't know which of these items she put antifreeze in. He did not go quickly.
It was painful for him. It was a painful death.
And all those hours that Frank lingered in misery, Angelina watched him die.
It has a sadistic element to it.
They painted her as this woman who didn't see Frank as a husband, but just saw him as a payday. And they had a long line of proof.
For starters, they had testimony from Frank's sister about Angelina and her strange premonition that Frank had been poisoned with oleander.
I do remember the prosecutor having me go over what I had said in the limousine and the phone conversations that I'd had with Angelina.
She's pointing out to the sisters who came in from out of state. That's oleander, it grows on the freeway here. Statements like that, the DA, I'm sure, felt were gems.
Then there was the telephone call with the man Angelina had accused of murder, Frank's former co-worker, and the call she had made to the cops soon after, claiming that he had threatened her.
Whatever Angelina's claims are, they know she's lying. They have it all on tape.
But most of all, they had plenty of evidence about how Angelina had not only pushed the medical examiner's office to issue a death certificate, she'd been pestering the insurance company too, anxious to collect on Frank's $250,000 insurance policy.
Within only a few hours of Frank's death, Angelina calls the insurance agent and asks him how quickly she could get her payout.
She's doing things that are so incredibly stupid and self-destructive that she's practically waving a flag at everybody saying, "It's me, I'm the one."
The jury didn't have to take the prosecution's word for it either. They put Angelina and Frank's insurance agent on the stand to explain how the couple had taken out the $250,000 policy just 2 months before Frank's death. According to the agent, Frank had initially hesitated at buying the policy.
He said that he didn't feel that he needed any additional life insurance because he had insurance through his job.
But the agent said that Angelina wouldn't take no for an answer.
And she started to tell him all the reasons why that she felt they needed insurance. And she was doing such a good job that I just sat there and shut my mouth and I said, hey, I'm going to let her do the selling for me.
Frank had agreed to take out the policy according to the agent. And barely 2 months later, Angelina had come looking to collect.
She called me and she says that I have some bad news. My husband's dead. And I said, wow.
The insurance agent wasn't the only new witness the prosecution put on the stand, though. They also called a woman named Palmyra, a friend of Angelina's from Paso Robles. Palmyra testified about discussions with Angelina that mirrored the ones that she'd had with Frank's sister.
She had had discussions with her friend about Oleander.
However, unlike Frank's sister, Palmyra said that Angelina had started discussing Oleander with her before Frank's death. That wasn't all, though, because Palmyra also revealed the real reason Angelina made all those weekend trips up to Paso Robles. She was having an affair.
Angelina had maintained a relationship with a boyfriend who lived up there.
Not only was Angelina having an affair, according to Palmyra, she had told her lover that she'd soon be free to spend even more time with him.
She told him on one of these weekends that when she returned home, she expected Frank to be dead.
Palmyra said that at the time, she thought Angelina had been joking about poisoning her husband. But once her friend had been arrested, she'd gone to the authorities and agreed to testify against her, and that Angelina eventually found out she was cooperating.
Angelina's just desperate. She calls and asks her to lie to investigators about a conversation they had had.
And like so many of Angelina's other phone conversations, the prosecutors had the whole thing on tape. However, Angelina's friend Palmyra wasn't the last person who turned against her. Next, the prosecutors told the jury how in May of 2002, Angelina's cellmate had come forward, claiming that she had been asking around the cell block, wondering if anyone could put her in touch with a hitman. The target, of course, was Palmyra. The friend Angelina had already tried to talk out of cooperating with the police.
She told her cellmate she would pay $20,000 to whomever would carry out the hit.
The cellmate told Angelina she might know someone, but that was a lie.
The very person that Angelina asked to do a hit turned around and told authorities what Angelina was doing.
Informed of what Angelina was up to, the authorities decided to play along. First, they had the cellmate tell Angelina it was all arranged. And then, they sent an undercover cop to visit Angelina in jail, posing as the hitman with pictures of her friend Palmyra's body.
Something happened to your friend.
What?
Right.
Where did you get those from?
What Angelina didn't know was that the photos were fake and that Palmyra had posed for them.
To act as though she's been shot. That way they can take these photographs, show them to Angelina.
And Angelina's response gave authorities exactly what they were looking for.
When the hitman presents Angelina with evidence that her best friend has been killed, she doesn't cry. She doesn't show any emotion.
The attempted hit, the affair, the insurance. By the time the prosecution rested its case, they'd piled up an impressive amount of evidence against Angelina.
The state had a very strong argument.
And yet, over at the defense table, Angelina appeared unfazed.
She just kind of sat there stone cold, just kind of an arrogant air about her.
On the other hand, her attorney was feeling anything but arrogant.
I was in a tough spot.
So tough that when it was the defense's turn began to present its case, Angelina's attorney didn't put her on the stand or call any other witnesses.
There was so much evidence stacked against Angelina that there was not much they could do to prove or say otherwise.
And after one day of deliberation, the jury found Angelina guilty of first-degree murder.
Maybe we were finally going to get some justice.
Coming up, the defense hopes a shocking secret from Angelina's childhood will earn the jury's sympathy.
She had a very traumatic past.
But the prosecution counters by accusing Angelina of an unspeakable crime.
Every so often, you come across these criminals that seem so monstrous.
On October 31st, 2003, just days after being convicted of murdering her husband Frank, Angelina Rodriguez was back in a California courtroom. The jury that had decided she was guilty of first-degree murder still had to decide whether or not to sentence the 35-year-old to death.
She was just so cold-hearted about it all. It really turned them against her.
So during her sentencing hearing, the defense did its best to create sympathy for Angelina.
The strongest defense that Angelina had was her rough childhood.
She had come from a very traumatic past.
In fact, according to the defense, Angelina had been hiding a horrible secret her entire life. The grandfather who'd practically raised her had also abused her.
He began sexually molesting her when she was a very small child, and this continued until she was in her teens.
The defense even claimed that he had gotten Angelina pregnant twice.
She had, as a result of that illicit relationship, been forced to have 2 abortions. She tried killing herself several times as an escape from all this misery.
It was a sad story, one that might have earned the jury's sympathy if it weren't for the prosecutor's accusation about the other horrible trauma in Angelina's past, the death of her infant daughter.
She had been suspected of killing her own child.
Because just like in Frank's case, Angelina had received a huge payout from her daughter's death. Larger, even.
A total settlement of $750,000.
The defense denied the accusation, reminding the jury that Angelina had never been charged in her daughter's death.
She just thought that was ridiculous.
But prosecutors argued that even the possibility that Angelina could have been involved put her in a different class of criminal.
Every so often, you come across these criminals that seem so monstrous. The rest of us have a really hard time understanding.
Though the jury had no trouble reaching a decision.
They decided that there was only one fate for Angelina. She should die.
When the decision was handed down, Angelina stood stone-faced.
She just never ever showed any remorse. She had no conscience. She just really did not. Cold-hearted killer. The term truly applies to her.
That was incredible.